started because it's 3:35 by my watch. Mr. Vishwanath, you are, with your kind permission, let us get started because.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. So may I request Ankit to get started, please? Ankit, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just setting up the live stream.
Yeah. So it's 3:35. So let's get started.
Yeah. So good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the panelists and the attendees who have joined us today, and to everyone who have just started watching on our live stream on YouTube. So we welcome you all to our 45th webinar titled Challenges and Opportunities in Indian Refractory Industry towards Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, organized by Steel and Metallurgy. A warm welcome to our gold sponsor, Vesuvius, our silver sponsor, Dalmia OCL, our steel sponsors, CCRT Lab and Zircon, and our innovation partner, RHI Magnesita. I would now introduce our panelists for today. If I could get a short feedback if my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So our keynote speaker for today is Mr. Pramod Sagar, President, World Refractory Association and President, India, West Asia and Africa, RHI Magnesita. Then we have our guest of honor, Mr. Nitin Jain, Managing Director, Vesuvius India Limited and Vice President, India, Southeast Asia, Vesuvius. Then we have Mr. Sameer Nagpal, CEO, Refractories, Dalmia Bharat Limited. Then we have Mr. Ish Mohan Garg, Chairman, IMERIS India and MD VP Calderis, HTS SW Asia. We have Mr. H.L. Rai, Founder and Managing Director, Zirka Refractories Limited. Mr. S.C. Vishwanath, Senior Vice President, SMS Vijayanagar Works, JSW Steel Limited. Mr. Kingshuk Bhattacharjee, Chief General Manager, SMS3 Bhilai Steel Plant Sale. Mr. A.K. Sinha, Chief General Manager, Refractory Durgapur Steel Plant, Steel Authority of India Limited. Dr. Sanjay Kwande, MD CCRT Laboratories. Dr. S. Anantakumar, Chief Scientist, Ceramics Activity Material Science and Technology Division, CSIR NIIST, Thiruvananthapuram. Mr. Arnab Bhattacharya, General Manager in Charge, Refractory Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, Visakhapatnam Steel Plant. Mr. Gautam Ghosh, Senior Manager, Refractory Technology Group, Tata Steel Limited. Mr. M.R. Kumar, General Manager, Iron Making Mecon Limited. And Mr. Harish Bhatt, Assistant General Manager, Process and Technical Marketing, Irish India Private Limited. So these are our panelists for today's discussion. Now, before we proceed, just a few short guidelines for smooth platform management during today's proceedings. So for all the numerous attendees who have joined us today on Zoom to listen to our discussion, we have a Q&A section. So if you look down below in the settings, you will find a Q&A section, and it will be visible to all the panelists as well as the attendees. So if you have any questions, you can write your questions there, or you can write them in the chat, and the panelists can choose to either answer it live or directly in the chat section. I would also request all the panelists to keep their microphones muted when the other panelists are speaking to avoid any kind of noise feedback or interference. And last but not the least, I would request all the panelists to adhere to the time limit as given in the program to avoid any delays. Today's webinar will be moderated by my father, Mr. Nirmalya Mukherjee. So on behalf of Steel and Metallurgy and our sponsors, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. Before we move on to our keynote address, we will first have the national anthem, followed by which we will display a corporate video by our innovation partner, RHI Magnesita. So I would request you all to please rise for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे
भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा। तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे। गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे जय हे जय हे, जय 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 हे।
So before we move on to our keynote address by Mr. Pramod Sagar, we have video by our innovation partner, RHI Magnesita.
India, a country that is ready to embrace the future. A future where its products and services are the best in the world. Driving this new Atmanirbhar India will be its industrial engines, churning things that the world demands. And at the heart of all this is the refractory industry, be it steel, glass, cement or copper. Refractories shape the building blocks of modern civilization at temperatures hotter than the volcano. And we are the people that make this possible. We are RHI Magnesita India, the new driving force of India's refractory industry. We are born out of the integration of three leading refractory companies: Orient Refractories, RHI Clasil, and RHI India. With our combined strength, we are proud to be a partner in India's growth journey here on. The integration has enabled us to synergize, simplify, and consolidate our strength in India to serve our ever-growing customers better. It has enhanced the business and operational synergies by pooling of management expertise, technologies, and other resources between the businesses. RHI Magnesita India is now providing customers with one single refractory solution platform, offering the industry's most comprehensive and modern product and service portfolio. This includes magnesia and alumina-based bricks and mixes, specialty refractory products like isostatic products and slide gates, and innovative automation and digital solutions. Our state-of-the-art plants at Bhiwadi, Vizag and Cuttack are now better aligned to cater to customers across geographies with greater efficiency in product delivery and customer servicing. We have optimized this production network through maximizing operational and supply chain excellence. We now bring in our global R&D and technical expertise of more than 250 scientists to our customers in India. Driving the industry with zeal, dedication and precision, our 2,000 plus skilled workforce are working incessantly to fuel India's industrial growth by taking innovation to 1200 degrees and beyond. India has emerged as the second largest steel producer and strives towards achieving the milestone of 300 million ton per annum of steel production by 2030. Staying dedicated to Make in India, we are committed to contribute towards this. Together with you, we will continue to drive innovation and sustainability in the Indian refractory industry in days to come.
Okay. Yeah,
So, yeah.
Ankit, yeah, let me just inform everyone that Mr. Pramod Sagar, because he's tied up, and his speech was pre-recorded earlier, and Mr. Pramod Sagar's speech will be a recorded speech, which we will display right now. So, Ankit, if you could, that's play the speech of Mr. Pramod Sagar.
Yeah, I received the speech. I will just give me a moment so that I can pull it up. Yeah, so this is the keynote message from Mr. Pramod Sagar.
Namaskar and very good afternoon. I am extremely sorry for not being able to interact with you live today due to sudden change in my travel schedule. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. So I requested Nirmalyaji to play out this video message. I would like to thank Steel and Metallurgy team for bringing up this very pertinent topic for discussion today. India's plan to reach 300 million tons of crude steel production by 2030 seems doable, provided there is no significant physical disruption to rattle our economy. Most of the major steel makers are expanding capacity to meet this goal. This growth in steel industry will definitely open up opportunities for the refractory makers in the country to grow. But as of now, the refractory industry is not fully prepared to play its role to the full potential. The industry remains under-recognized as a critical partner in the core economic development of the country. This has resulted in lack of attention from the government. We as an industry deserve support from the government, be it in terms of review of duties or investment benefits. Proactive support from the government is essential to make the Indian refractory makers competitive enough and be self-reliant to contribute toward the steel growth. We need to be more considerate as a critical input provider to the economic growth of the country, and thereby get our due share in the economic and financial policies of the government. Government of India mandate of Atmanirbhar Bharat is a great opportunity for Indian manufacturers. We are encouraged to work toward import substitute. But this requires extensive R&D work, investment in technology, and product trial at shop floor level. I can tell you, at RHI Magnesita, we are working extensively on increasing our local production by means of producing import substitute products in India. We currently have at least 3-4 ongoing projects wherein we are working on doing technology transfer from Europe and elsewhere to make certain high-grade products in India. We are also working on increasing our magnesia carbon brick capacity in India to offset Chinese imports. Refractory raw material is a common cause of concern for all of us. As we know, India is not endowed with good quality raw material and we are heavily import dependent. Where will the additional demand for calcite bauxite, fused alumina, fused and dead burnt magnesite come from? How far can we remain China dependent? What are the alternatives we have? These are the open questions that we need to find answer to collectively as an industry. More recycling of used refractory may be one possible solution, though partial. This would also make sustainability more intrinsic to our growth as an industry. More investment in R&D to develop alternate raw material based recipes, investment in technology to reduce certain raw material intensity are some of the probable ways we can look at seriously. The post-COVID world has become extremely dynamic, ambiguous and volatile. Raw material prices inflation, irregular container availability, sea freight hike, energy crisis, environment restrictions have become burning issues to tackle. We need to work together to address these challenges of a new world to emerge as a growing and Atmanirbhar refractory industry capable enough to support India's growth ambitions. I am sure my fellow panelists who are highly experienced and have in-depth understanding of the industry will further throw light on these topics during the course of this webinar. Wishing you all the very best and thank you for having me with all of you today. Dhanyawad. Thank you.
Well, namaskar and warm gratitude to Pramod Sagar ji, for whom I have immense gratitude and respect, immense amount of respect he commands in the industry, and a wonderful human being. Those of you know him also know that Mr. Sagar is a wonderful human being as well. And having said that, now let me move on to another bright star, I would say, Mr. Nitin Jain, Managing Director of Vesuvius India. Vesuvius, in fact, has a tradition of having a very young, talented force. And very few people perhaps know that it is perhaps one of the few refractory manufacturers who have started automation as a part of their journey right from the beginning. The chairman of Vesuvius and the then managing director, Mr. Vishwadeep Gupta, is very close to me, someone I know for more than 20 years now, 25 years, I would say. So those of you who know, he has been a part of the JSW team. He was, in fact, at one time JMD of JSW Bengal, had JSW Bengal in Salboni taken off. He would have been the joint MD and CEO of that plant. So that unfortunately did not take off. Instead, we have a cement plant of JSW in Salboni. So that's the legacy of Vesuvius. And in fact, let me tell you, it caused me a lot of pain when the day I heard about the untimely passing away of the previous managing director, Mr. Ritesh Tungarwal, because he was perhaps even younger than Mr. Nitin Jain, if I'm right. And it was a very sad moment for all of us, the way we lost him suddenly, all of us suddenly. So at a very young age. But the legacy of Vesuvius goes on, and it is a good opportunity for us to have Mr. Nitin Jain on board, whom though I have not been able to meet so far, but what I hear, Vesuvius is now poised for next generation of growth. And as Mr. Pramod Sagar mentioned, we are now the growth of steel industry from say 110, 180 million tons to 300 million tons in the next 8 years. It's not an easy task, though it is achievable. Now the Ministry of Steel, Government of India, has moved one step forward. So now the next target is 500 million tons by the year 2047. By 2047, when India will become 100 years. So we have set the next target of 500 million tons, from 300 by 2030 to 500 by 2047. So if you look at that kind of a scenario where we have to reach 500 million tons, think of the amount of growth you would need in the refractory industry. Though refractory cost per se is only 8% of the total cost of production of steel. So it's nothing. And the total refractory industry is roughly valued between 10 to 11,000 crore. That's it. And in terms of volume in the steel industry, this is less than peanuts. So, but refractory, as I keep saying, refractory is like the mother in the house who takes all the load, all the burden. So the refractory takes the major load of taking the heat. So the heat and load is taken by the refractory industry. So it's an essential element of the steel industry. And as they say, almost 70 to 75% of the refractories are consumed by the steel industry alone. So without further ado, once again, a warm welcome and namaskar to Nitin ji. And from today, I would like to welcome you as a part of our family. You are a part of the family, Nitin ji. And let's hope we'll have more of interactions with you in the days ahead. And it's a wonderful opportunity, Nitin ji, to welcome you as a part of our team. Now, before you share your thoughts with us, we have the Vesuvius video presentation, the corporate video of Vesuvius. And let me thank Mr. Nitin Jain personally for being the lead sponsor today. So you are, this is, so to say, it has happened because of your support and also the support of other sponsors who came forward to support us. So once again, a warm thanks. And I request Ankit to play the corporate video. Thank you, Ankit. So, Nitinji, once again, warm welcome. And Mr. Sanjay Kwande, Sanjayji, I know you have to leave early. So, after Nitinji, you will be next on board. So, I know you have to leave early. So, I have been asked to ensure that you speak just after Nitinji. So, without wasting much time, it's over to Vesuvius India Managing Director, Mr. Nitin Jain. Nitinji, the floor is yours.
Mukherjee sir, thank you very much. You have been very kind with your words. I appreciate invitation and opportunity to speak on this forum. It's a great event and great opportunity to share views. When we look at the current times, I guess last 12 to 18 months, steel industry has been a very exciting space. Well, it has always been exciting, but if you look at global demand of steel as well as pricing, I think it has made potentially last 12 months or so some of the best time of decades. This has led to now a lot of investment in steel industry, right? Capacity increase, which has already happened, and a lot of commitment in further investment. Now, if you look at the forecast for most forums, from most indicators, most of the steel capacity expansions are happening in India. If you look at this from a data perspective, over next decade, roughly 50% of new steel capacity is coming in India and Southeast Asia. So again, we are living in some of the best time that steel industry has seen. Now, talking about refractory industry, India enjoy a very strong base for refractory industry, both in terms of manufacturing capacity as well as product portfolio. There is a significant investment underway in increasing capacity in India for especially refractory. It helps our customers not only in terms of supply security, it's local, and it also support our customers in terms of shorter supply chains. If anything, in last 12 months or 18 months with COVID disruption, shorter supply chain is at least one learning that we can take away. When we talk about opportunities and challenges, right? Let's talk about the gorilla in the room, China, being half of world steel capacity. Now that also applies to the refractory industry. So refractory industry in China is roughly half of the world refractory industry, right? That being said, as Chinese demand or manufacturing goes down, what happens to the capacity in China for refractory industry? In short term, I guess it's going to change global demand, but in short term, India has been insulated both from political point of view as well as because of COVID disruption. But what is not clear, how long? So I think for refractory industry, there are a number of challenges. If you look at today, supply from China, both directly or indirectly, contributes more than 50% of Indian refractory demand, whether it's coming in form of finished goods or it's coming in the form of raw material. So for refractory industry, I think there are a number of challenges and opportunity, but I think there are two things that we need to do. One, we need to continue to innovate and create differentiation, create technology edge, application edge over Chinese. But it cannot happen unless our customer, steel industry, is willing to pay for the technology, and the refractory industry in return is steer the interest of our customer towards technology. And second, in terms of raw material, China continues to be a major source of raw material, which creates a sustenance challenge for the industry, and it requires research, investment by refractory industry, and it requires strong government policy framework. Now, talking about Vesuvius, what we have been doing, number one, our efforts have been continued to partner with our customers in terms of improving their quality or yield, which helps them at the end be more competitive in their end market through new products and solutions. Second, I'm very happy to share that Vesuvius R&D Center in India, Global R&D Center in India, is now completing 5 years. It's staffed with some of the best scientists and top-notch equipment and infrastructure. It supports not only the Indian customers' need for locally produced products and technology, but it also supports our global needs. Lastly, there has been very significant investment by Vesuvius in terms of increasing capacity. Almost all our plants, we are expanding capacity. We are also investing not only in capacity in terms of technology, as we are upgrading our infrastructure. Second, there is a strong pipeline of CapEx underway, where we bringing best-in-class technology from Vesuvius to India to support this vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. With that being said, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak on this forum and share my view. Thank you, Mukherjee Saab, for inviting me.
Thank you, Mr. Jain, for the wonderful, short and precise presentation from your end. And just to answer your question that you had asked me previously, so we are having a participation of around 110 people based on the people we have on Zoom and on our live streams as well. So yeah, thanks again. Thanks once again for being the lead sponsor for the webinar today and for making this webinar possible.
Thank you, Ankit.
So do we have any questions for Mr. Jain? Any questions from the panelists or the audience?
Yeah, Mr. Jain, this is Dr. Sanjay. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that we too are associated with Vesuvius and whatever the testing requirement they require in their R&D. Recently, we did some job for them. So we are just not limiting ourselves just as a testing partner, parameter excellence or parameter assessment. We can, put some ideas together because we are working more on refractory waste management also. So I look forward to, more better and bigger job because very few companies like Vesuvius are, spending some good time on doing something innovative. So we would like to contribute on that part.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the association and partnership. And this question of recycling sustainability is a very significant question. It's raw material. The Mother Earth has limited resources, so
absolutely
we all need to do our bit, and our focus and investment remains committed towards that. But thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thanks.
So thank you, Mr. Kwande, for your question, and thanks once again to Mr. Nitin Jain. So we move over to our next presenter. And before we do, we have a short corporate video by Dalmia Bharat. So I would like to play that now.
Dalmia OCL has been part of industrialization of India. Refractory is the core need for any metal to be made, for that matter even cement and glass. And we have been in operation since last 65 years. And we have gone through and seen every change which has happened in the steel and cement technology in India. When customer comes to us, he does not need to go to multiple other companies. With such wide range of products, we can be the one-stop service provider for all their needs.
We design your refractories for you, we produce it, we send it to you, and our people stand there to install it for you, and then we guarantee the performance.
In Refractory company, one thing which is unique is that we are in our customers' manufacturing process. And customers are continuously innovating. So our ability to be able to sync ourselves with the changes in the customer's manufacturing process is extremely important. And that is something which we do extremely well.
If any manufacturer has a mind as a backward integration, that is the definitely advantage. I have inventory, and if I require, I can move my inventory in no time. So that is the advantage which we can pass to the customer.
Over the last few years, we have outgrown our competition in India, and we have now the fastest growing refractory company. Internationally, we are looking at M&A opportunities as our route to growth. We believe that combination of India's low-cost manufacturing, Europe's high technology availability, and learnings which we can bring from Europe to India gives us a unique advantage to service our customers better.
Seven made some exploration of the market, but there was absolutely no doubt that Dalmia was the only one which could fulfill our requirements, our expectations in terms of innovation, in terms of attitude, in terms of being projected into the future.
The other way we are looking at M&A is that we go outside of India, acquire companies which have good service infrastructure and sell our products to international customers.
With the acquisition of GSB Germany, our customer base will definitely increase. You know, Europe is the cradle of steel making in the world, so the experience that these gentlemen bring is stupendous.
We believe that as center of gravity for steel and cement making shifts towards India, so will refractory production. And Dalmia OCL is in a great position to build on that opportunity, as we have very strong history and experience to capitalize as this shift happens. I think our team is all charged up or all fired up, as the slogan we use in our company, to make sure that Dalmia OCL becomes one of the top refractory companies in the world.
That was a wonderful video presentation from Dalmia OCL. So unfortunately, Mr. Sameer Nagpal, CEO Refractories of Dalmia Bharat, could not join us today. He did send us a short video message, but before playing that, since Dr. Sanjay Kwande will have to leave early, so I would first request him to give his address. So Dr. Sanjay Kwande is the Managing Director of CCRT Laboratories. Before I move over to Dr. Kwande, we also have a short video from CCRT Laboratories. So Dr. Kwande, would you like me to play the video first, or would you like to speak?
Sure,
Okay.
That is a base for it, yes.
Yeah, that would be a good introduction for the company before your address. So this is the corporate video by CCRT Laboratories.
Thank you, Ankit.
Yeah, thank you, and over to you, Dr. Kwande.
Yeah, it's really great afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. You are always, very excited and passionate man about steel and refractory, and I always admire that. The way that you handle the things, the way that you organize the things, brings all the stalwarts together to push the things. That's really commendable. So let me start. If Ankit, if you have a presentation with you, if that can be run from there, or I'll just talk about.
So I will just check. Give me a moment. I cannot find your
Okay,
presentation.
no problem. I'll talk. I have a copy here. From here, I can speak about it.
If you have a
Yeah.
copy,
So
you can share your screen as well.
actually, I'm on mobile, so that's the reason I was shared with you. No issues. I have a laptop here right now. So what we are today is going to talk about these challenges and opportunity in refractory. This is always a boiling talk about everybody, because as we showed in our corporate video, refractory is the thing without which we cannot think of modern life. We cannot think of chair, we cannot think of cars, we cannot think of anything which gives pleasures to us, gives peace to us. So that is what the importance of refractory. But unfortunately, refractory people doesn't get that kind of highlight from the other industries, as they are been called as very important and not to forget or not this. So we want to have that kind of view from the society, and that's the reason people should, refractory people should come together and create that branding for our own refractory per se. So let's, my agenda for today is to talk about challenges in the terms of cause of concern, then parameters of performance, then what way the collaboration can happen. Mr. Jain has already talked about collaboration, so I'll try to put on some ideas further, and then in together what are the collective opportunities for us to take it further. And I'll be talking more from my background, testing, inspections and all that, because I'm not in manufacturing and trading. So those things and the numbers can come from all the other dignitaries and how we are moving ahead. So refractory is a material that resistant to decomposition by heat, pressure or chemical attack and retains strength from high temperatures. That's a general definition. But I find challenge and opportunity, both the things, in just one single line. That is, refractories must be chosen according to the condition they face. And that one single line gives everything what refractory is for. Is causes of concerns, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Jain, is a quality, material quality. So Mother Earth, deteriorations of deteriorated raw material sources, then that is one of the a lot of beneficiation and impurity improvements and things are going on. But again, in last seminar I talked about it, and it is all about fragmented efforts. Unless we come together, share the knowledge, things will not happen. Things will not happen to the logical conclusions and at the faster rate. Because what we are doing is we are reinventing the wheels at every corner, which is already maybe available with somebody. So we have to shed our differences. We have to come together to share that knowledge, and we have to go ahead and use that combined knowledge, combined efforts, so that the things can be at faster pace. That is what is something which is we have to do together. Then manufacturing limitation, application issues, intermittent inspection, maintenance, and failure evaluations. So these are the causes of concern at practical level. In material quality, as I said, it's all about raw material stability. Then lack of impurity approach. If we are there in this testing inspection for last almost 20 years now, till date, I'm telling you, till date, people are talking about 80% alumina, 90% alumina, and now few people have started talking about less than 2% of iron, less than 1% of iron. That cautiousness, that cautious approach towards the impurity, that is to be furthermore strong, because these are the impurities. They are playing a hell of a impact onto the performance of the refractories. And refractories are meant to perform at those temperatures. That's why we have to shift the focus from the bulk to the impurity, to the ppm levels. Then non-consistent supplies. You may be having a vendor, but those vendors, are they in a position to supply that consistent? Because they are again still depend on further raw materials at their end. So that is something which is, at some point of time, every end user is little skeptical. Okay, because a lot of still the things are happening and going on the test certificate provided by the supplier. And at the operational level, problem and issues comes, and then the back engineering starts. So why? And then because of that, shutdowns and unnecessary issues crops up. Then there is one more problem at lab level or testing level. We have found out that you send one sample to one lab, you send the same sample to other lab, you will never get the chemical analysis report in total. If somebody is getting 80.3, other may get 78, 75. So still, though NABL processes are there, inter-laboratory comparison processes are there, but these are not happening to the way it is supposed to happen. We have to work on precision biases, and a lot of Dalmia has very good research center, Vesuvius has research centers. We have at private level, we have our own laboratories. Then there are so many. Calderys have very good facilities for testing. Carbonindum also has got. So we people have to come together. Tata has got centers. So we have to keep on doing the inter-laboratory comparisons to sharpen our skills of the testing level and results variation levels, so that we can help each other to grow further more accuracy on our testing capabilities, which are really going to play a role into the final refractory quality, which has to perform at the operational levels. So material packing and storage issues. This is what I'm finding every time with my own consumers. They have to buy sometimes refractory in a bulk container loads, and then some of the out of that 25 odd tons, hardly 5 tons or 7 tons refractory get consumed, and then all 20 or 15 odd tons refractories remained over there. Then refractory has a shelf life, then how it is stored, how it is packed. And India is altogether different humidity levels, temperature conditions level, and the manufacturers in Europe have their own temperature conditions variations. So metal has to show its performance deficiencies once it is used after a longer period of time. So something has to be, we have to improve on those things. Somewhere that has to be, checked by, or people have to be, intermittent analysis or intermittent calibrations. All those stuffs has to be done at that level, so that these all refractories are produced from natural resources, so that their extended life can be utilized and they can be used for a longer period of time, so that we can save on a lot of natural resources, refractory consumption, and the drain of dollar to import these refractories. Then other one I've identified is a manufacturing limitations. I'm supporting not only the big plants for their critical testing, but at the same time we are working for small manufacturers at Wakane or Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, then Kolkata, Odisha, and various other parts of India where refractory manufacturers are spread across. And then we realize, they themselves are having, after 6 months, the same product has got altogether different property behavior. And on that, when I talked to these manufacturers, I realized, I visited some of the facilities at Wakane and Ahmedabad, the highway, that road, and I realized that the product manufacturing consistency or quality consistency is an issue for these small manufacturers, because they have their own way of producing it with the very old ways of manufacturing, very less of automated processes, very labor-oriented processes, and then refractory selection, what is happening during the product mix, that is also an issue. But then it's going on. So, and then they have very little testing support services available at that smaller units. They don't have much of a WIP and FG quality assessment test. And again, the labor issue is there, because the competitiveness has harshed reality, and where the labor has to be very cheap, then that labor doesn't have that kind of knowledge base. So, all these limitations are there at manufacturing level. Then an application, even if you produce very good refractory, but we have seen in our last 20 years, majority of the time, because of application issues, refractory failures can be seen, and jobs has to be dismantled at certain point of time. And that's very bad situation. That's very bad situation. Why it is happening? Because the qualified masons, there has to be a proper process. Most of the time, mock-up samples are done, but they are done to get passed through. The approach has to be changed. They are actually for qualify that mason so that he can do the right job at the final work, production work. So it should not be just passing the particular person to get him on the job, or rather than he should be qualified and rightly selected. And sometimes there are so many project time pressures, and that is where a lot of application mistakes happens. There may be change in pressure, water level pressures, air pressures, and there will be not much of a hammering or compacting is happening. A lot of things to be pushed at the day, the night, and all that fatigue levels of the labors that relates to so many other things. And most of the time I have seen that quality of water is not analyzed in most of the refractory application cases. What are the chloride levels should be there and just to be monitored. That's one of the parameter which is very important parameter. But in wherever I have gone as an inspection for the refractory application services, so that is one of the parameter which is missing. It may in very few QIPs they said, and then it is done. And then hush up of mock-up and production samples. As I said, people have that approach to, my third-party inspector should pass my samples. So that approach has to go out. I have to get the right person. That should be the approach in the application process. Then as I was talking about intermittent inspection and maintenance. So there are APIs that exam people are passing, API 936, but just reading and doing clearance of that exam does not give you that insight of the refractory. So people have to spend good time at the site, at the production, at the application to become a better API inspector. Then there have to be a proper monitoring schedules. Everything is there in written in QIP, but that has to be followed to the depth, to the site. That is what is very important. Then in most of the time I've seen that people try to avoid, most of the things are taken as per the review, like test certificate review. And then there are critical parameters in every refractory performance. At least those parameters has to be done as a third-party assessment, if not all the parameters. And of course, timely maintenance intervention. Sometimes abhi chalta hai na, abhi chalega aur 10 din. Chalo खींचते हैं, production चाहिए, रोकना नहीं है. That makes more problem at the end of 10th day. Then finally, failure evaluation and solutions. So here also, again, if any failure happens, there is very limited approach to do a failure analysis. There is an approach of correction. Abhi kya karna hai? Kya karke kaam ko chalana hai? So that has to be, of course, that is one thing to address at that point of time. But that one should not limit themselves there. Why it has happened and how it can be corrected for the longer time and not for a reoccurrence. That should be done. And in that, there should not be a harassment for the vendor. Some services should be done. So that is very approach. Why vendor has failed on that? What are the intricacies were there? And that support approach. Normally what we follow is, deduction in his payments, putting him up into penalties. That is something which has to be looked again by the industry. Then parameters of performance should be the focus area for the refractory manufacturers as well as users, because refractories are used on the basis of which industry they are doing, the kind of refractory consumed in steel. Some of them might be used in cement, but cement requires some different type of refractories. Then again, operational parameter basis, there are different kind of abrasion based refractories are different than, spalling based refractories at certain level. So these are, performance parameter basis refractories is used. So the evaluation of these refractories should be on the basis of operational conditions. Most of the time we realize that refractory is going to be used at the temperature of 1000 degree, 1500 degree. and their parameters for qualification are tested at 110 degrees. 110 degrees of VD, 110 degrees of Celsius, they know how we will behave at 1000 degrees. So it's that is anything, and we have to change the performance parameters evaluation criteria, and that is why this parameter, that parameter, how these two parameters are playing a role. That is again a next level of thinking to be done on the parameters of performance. So how to do all these things? That is where the collaboration is required. So collaboration starts with the end user and a supplier. And then the third party comes into it is a refractory consultant. So consultant has to think not just from the end user or the supplier. His social role is also very important because he is a part of the ecosystem. So he has to consultant himself has not just to think of operational parameters, not just to think of refractory consumption per se. He has to think of natural resources, shutdowns, loss of profit. All those concepts should be involved into that design, that test requirement, that everything should be. And if required, they can take the independent test centers or their own test centers, their quality person to this. And then the entire plan should be failed. And this required a knowledge sharing, which is very limited right now. We have IRMA. IRMA is setting up an excellence center, but then how far it has gone? You know, how far people have industries have contributed from the knowledge they have gained, and how far that knowledge has been disseminated from that common association to all. That is something to be looked into, or that is something to be pushed actually. So this is what a collective opportunity for all. We should now look beyond talk. We are talking too much on, we should come together, we should do together, but now we have to have a concrete action plan by our own selves. We are using natural resources, then at the same time they are becoming a waste. So how this waste comes back to us as a new use, or how it can go to some other use. Okay, how it can be recycled, reused, reproportionate, all those re's to be, think of. Then any refractory which is about to expire, then if it is all that has to be revalidation, if it is not getting passed for the certain sections of the refractory use, then whether it can be used for something else or something else can be mixed into it to used in some other industry. All those things to be done. And of course, consistent training to labor and officer, because right now new blood, not good ceramic engineers are coming in, or the ceramic engineers doesn't have that, day one capabilities to, jump into the action and do some contribution. So they need that interest levels, the payment levels, all this, we have to excite them to join this forum, put some research into it, put some efforts into it. So that is what is needed. Look beyond talks. We have to do that concrete something for all of them, so that a real change can happen. So again, I would say the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. I hope. Thank you so much. I would say educative presentation, undoubtedly, as it's always with you. You are more of, I would say, a motivator and educator than a entrepreneur, so to say. So it's wonderful listening to you every time we do. And now it's time to hear another very important, I would say, person in the refractory industry, someone whom I respect a lot, and someone I find is a wonderful orator, a good speaker. And today, unfortunately, as I speak to you, he is boarding a flight. So once again, he has sent his. Yeah, Mr. Kumar, can you hear me now? Mr. Kumar, please unmute
Sir,
and tell me.
yeah, sir, I'm hearing, sir.
So I think your issue is sorted now, so you won't have a problem. So please stay with us. When your turn comes, you will be speaking, and please, in the meantime, please stay with us. So I'll now move on to our next recorded speech of Mr. Sameer Nagpal, who's the CEO of Refractories of Dalmia Bharat, and in fact, Dalmia Bharat has a lot to contribute as well, and they have also, as you know, taken over GSB Refractories in Germany. So, Mr. Sameer Nagpal's, I would request you to, Ankit, play Mr. Sameer Nagpal's message, which he has recorded. So, Ankit,
yeah. So before we
I think
on to the,
I think you've already played the video of
yes,
corporate video. So you have to just play his message, which he has just sent to us. Yeah, Ankit, go ahead.
yeah. So we had actually we had a question for Dr. Kwande, but I think he had to leave, so he's not available to answer the question at the moment.
Okay.
So in that case, yeah, we will move on to the video that Mr. Sameer Nagpal has sent us for today's webinar.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers, Steel and Metallurgy, for giving me the opportunity to speak at this event. I apologize for not doing this live, but I appreciate for being allowed to send a recording. The headline of my talk, and I couldn't resist naming it this way, is Bharat Ki Factory mein Bharat Ki Refractory. In the last 6 years of my working in the refractory industry, this is the first time that I see happy faces around me. Finally, the Indian refractory industry feels valued and acknowledged for its contribution to our nation's economic development, since we enable the basic industries such as steel and cement. So what drives this acknowledgement? What opportunities does this bring for us? And what challenges do we face? Let's have a look. The biggest driver for this happiness, which I see on the faces of people, is because of the emphasis on the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative or Make in India campaign. This changes everything for refractory industry. A large part of this change is due to change in our customers' mindset and, of course, a gentle nudge from the government. This opens up a great opportunity for long-term growth and creation of a local ecosystem for stable source of critical raw materials like refractory, which enable steel, cement, and other metals, which are so critical for infrastructure development of our country. Before I move forward, let me crunch some numbers. The Indian steel industry is expected to reach a capacity of 300 million tons by 2030. That means a production of roughly 230 million tons by that time, which will be up from production of 118 million tons in 2022. The cement industry is expected to grow at 12%, which is double of its historical CAGR. As of 2019, the Indian refractory market was sized at an estimated 9,000 crores and closing in on 10,000 crores last year. We have all witnessed how India's steel and cement industry have primarily relied on made in China refractory in the past. The state of Sino-Indian affairs in the past few years has led to a concern on overdependence on China for raw materials as critical as refractory, which are required for steel making. Adding to this, pandemic-led uncertainty combined with China's internal policy changes have further compounded the issue and disrupted availability of refractory. Similarly, on the global front, the changes in geopolitical environment have led companies and countries to focus on de-risking their supply chain by reducing dependence on China. This has made them look towards India as an alternative supply source. All this has created a unique opportunity for Indian refractory industry. The point I am making is that the refractory producers of India now have a seat on the table. A great example of which is that the newly appointed president of World Refractory Association, Mr. Sagar, is a person nominated by Indian Refractory Makers Association. All this is good news, but it is just the beginning of a new game. And to emerge as winners in this game, every stakeholder, that is, the steelmakers, the government, and the Indian refractory industry, all three need to be aligned, stay committed, and invest in this bright future. With India being the largest producer of steel and cement outside of China, the opportunity for Indian refractory industry is immense. It is time for us to create a new future for ourselves. So what needs to be done by each stakeholder? Indian refractory industry needs to invest in capacities and capabilities more than ever before. Not only we need to produce more, we need to produce better, we need to service better, and we need to innovate better. So investments have to be done both in physical infrastructure and in knowledge infrastructure. Let me share what we are doing as company on these aspects. At Dalmia OCL, we continue to invest in enhancing our production capacities in different plants in a manner that more and more products are produced closer to our customers. We are also upgrading our infrastructure and installing newer equipments to enhance the quality of our products to a degree that they meet global standards. Not only that, we are also bringing experts from Europe and Americas to guide and navigate our R&D and innovation related efforts. The second stakeholder, which I consider as the most important in this whole game, the Indian steelmakers, who will be the biggest beneficiary of this new ecosystem in the long run. They need to resist the attraction to cheaper Chinese supplies in the short term. The best case cost savings in full-blown Chinese purchase is only 0.3% of steel making cost. This new Make in India ecosystem should be given a fair chance to gain scale when it will be able to offer the highest value to the steelmakers as a combination of price, services, recycling, predictability, and timeliness. Let me now talk about the third stakeholder, the government. I believe there is a case for urgent action to frame suitable policies to discover local raw material through extensive exploration. Only then will the Indian refractory industry truly become Atmanirbhar and will be able to unleash its full potential. Policies like production-linked incentives and lower duty on raw material also need to be put in place to reinforce the investments which refractory industry is going to make. In conclusion, I want to say, we are at a point where Indian refractory industry could transform itself to become one of the biggest and the best in the world. Let us all resolve that we will cause this change with all our intention. While at Dalmia OCL our slogan is Bharat ki factory mein Bharat ki refractory, if I have to give a slogan for the Indian refractory industry, it will be Duniya ki factory mein Bharat ki refractory. Thank you everyone for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Samit ji, from the bottom of my heart for a very inspirational statement. I think Mr. Vishwanath would also agree that This was one initiative which Sajanji initially put forward when the pandemic started. He said that I am not going to depend on Chinese supply anymore, and we will try to make ourselves Atmanirbhar. So the Atmanirbharta message in this country started at the beginning of, even before the pandemic began. It was a message from Mr. Sajan Jindal, very clearly indicating that we will not remain dependent on the Chinese supplies for our mills. So that's where I took off, and Sameerji right from the beginning has been taking this initiative forward of Atmanirbhar Bharat to make India self-reliant. Unfortunately, the refractory industry needs, the basic minerals also as imports, because we don't produce many of those minerals as of today. So the basic raw material is still a challenge, but I'm sure this we will find alternate sources. We will develop our indigenous raw material sources wherever possible. And these issues will be tackled in the days to come, though it may take quite some time before we become 100% self-reliant. So with that, I would now move on to another refractory manufacturer, and then we will move on to Mr. Vishwanath. So the next speaker is Mr. H.L. Rai, founder and managing director of Zarkar Refractories. But before that, we have the video display of Zarkar Refractories. So Mr. Rai, please wait for the video, and then it's your turn, Mr. Rai. So Ankit, if you could play the video of Zarkar Refractories. थैंक यू राज साहब, थैंक यू। आपसे बस एक ही सवाल था। वंस अगेन नमस्कार एंड वार्म वेलकम। और पहली बार आप हमसे जुड़ रहे हैं। Though my colleagues had met you at during ICRJ in Jamshedpur, my team had met you there, and that was the beginning of our relationship. But I am meeting you for the first time, so warm welcome to our family. And आज से हम जुड़े रहेंगे। हम जिनके साथ मेरा तो काम यही है कि इंडस्ट्री को जोड़ना। So it's my job to ensure that Zircon becomes a part of our family setup in bringing you together with the steel industry. बस एक ही सवाल था राय साहब, बिफोर यू स्टार्ट शेयरिंग योर थॉट्स विद अस, ये जिरकार नाम आप क्या जिरकोनिया से रखे हैं या व्हाट वाज द रीजन बिहाइंड चूजिंग जिरकार रिफ्रैक्टरी एज द नेम?
नमस्कार, मैं सारे सवालों का जवाब दूंगा। वीडियो में कोई पिक्चर्स दिख नहीं रही है इस समय। सारे लोग गायब हो गए क्या या थक गए? नहीं है ना, ये कैमरा सबने ऑफ करके रखा है, इसलिए आप देख नहीं पा रहे हैं। लेकिन सबका मेरी शक्ल अच्छी नहीं लग रही है। नहीं, वो अपना शक्ल नहीं दिखाना चाहते हैं जब आप बोल रहे हैं। सो मतलब गुड आफ्टरनून टू एवरीबॉडी। मैं हिंदी में बोलना चाहूँगा और उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग हमें माफ करेंगे। आपका सब्जेक्ट जो मैं देख रहा हूँ कि चैलेंजेस एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज फॉर इंडियन रिफ्रैक्टरी, और आत्मनिर्भर उसमें जोड़ दिया है। और अभी तक जो मैंने लोगों के स्पीचेस सुने, जो बातें सुनी, दोनों में थोड़ा अंतर मुझे लग रहा था कि जो सब्जेक्ट था और जो बातें हो रही हैं, ये आई कॉल इट मिसनॉमर। इसमें जो बेसिकली जो रिफ्रैक्टरी इंडस्ट्री जिस प्रोसेस से गुजर रही है और उसके लिए जो चैलेंजेस हैं फॉर द मैन्युफैक्चरर, फॉर द सप्लायर, फॉर द बायर, जिसमें कि स्टील इज द प्राइमरी बायर है, उसके विषय पे मैं कहना चाहूँगा। इसमें जो आपके शब्द हैं हेडिंग के, फॉर एग्जांपल आत्मनिर्भर, चैलेंजेस एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज, मैं जैसे आपने पूछा जिरकार और मैं, जो हमारे पैनलिस्ट हैं, जो लिसनर्स हैं, उनके लिए हम लोग दोनों नए चेहरे हैं। वी डोंट नो एनीबडी एंड नोबडी नोज अस। वी आर न्यू टू इन दिस फील्ड, दो वी आर आई एम इन इंडस्ट्री फॉर प्रेटी लॉन्ग टाइम। माय बीटेक वाज इन 1975, सो आई एम श्योर इन एज प्रॉब्ली आई विल बी सीनियर मोस्ट इन। आप लोगों के सबसे कंपैरिजन में मैं सबसे उम्र में बड़ा हूँ, क्योंकि 75 में बहुतों की तो पैदाइश नहीं हुई होगी। जिंदगी भर संयोग से या चॉइस से हमारे प्रोडक्ट ऐसे ही रहे हैं जहां पे हम लोगों ने देश को आत्मनिर्भर बनाने में मदद किया है, या कईयों की बहुत जबरदस्त प्रॉब्लम को हमने सॉल्व किया है। आई विल गिव सम एग्जांपल्स। फॉर एग्जांपल क्रूसिबल, जिसको रिफ्रैक्टरी वाले शायद मानते भी नहीं है कि रिफ्रैक्टरी है ये, इट इज अ रिफ्रैक्टरी प्रोडक्ट। इट इज यूज फॉर द फेरस एंड नॉन फेरस मेल्टिंग के लिए, छोटी साइज में, जिसकी प्राइमरी क्राइटेरियाज हैं कि हाई थर्मल शॉक, हाई थर्मल कंडक्टिविटी, कोरोजन, इरोजन रेजिस्टेंस। देयर वाज नो मैन्युफैक्चरर इन इंडिया टिल 1981, और वो एक चैलेंज था आत्मनिर्भर बनाने के लिए देश को, क्योंकि उसके पहले सारी इंपोर्ट होती थी। इंडिपेंडेंस के पहले केवल यूके से आती थी, इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद में जर्मनी से भी आने लगी। तो जो पहला प्लांट देश में बन रहा था, आई डोंट नो मिस्टर नितिन जैन है कि नहीं है, इज ही अवेलेबल?
नितिन जैन जी अभी मैसेज कर डाले थे वो हमारे ग्रुप में, मतलब स्क्रीन पे आप देखेंगे तो वो दूसरी कोई और मीटिंग के लिए चले गए। He just went for another meeting.
ठीक है, नो प्रॉब्लम, आई डिड सेम। तो वो जब एक क्रूसिबल बनने का किसी ने प्रपोज दिया था, गुजराती जेंटलमैन, ही थॉट ऑफ पुटिंग अप अ प्लांट इन गुजरात, क्रूसिबल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का। उसमें आई ज्वाइंड देम एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर, एंड क्रूसिबल इस देश में सबसे पहले मेरे थ्रू आई थी, एंड दैट वाज इन 1981। और तब से अभी तक लंबा रास्ता रहा। इट इज मोर देन 40 years इन द क्रूसिबल इंडस्ट्री। और एक के बाद अब धीरे धीरे कई इंडस्ट्रीज हो गई हैं, और इंपोर्ट तो विद इन फ्यू इयर्स टोटल बंद हो गई थी। और नॉट ओनली इंपोर्ट, नाउ वी एक्सपोर्ट अ लॉट। फॉर एग्जांपल हमारा खुद का बिजनेस 25-30% एक्सपोर्ट का है, दूसरे लोग भी एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं, तो वहाँ आत्मनिर्भर हम लोग बन चुके हैं। सिमिलरली एक इंडियन रेलवे व्हील मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए दे हैव टेक्नोलॉजी फ्रॉम डिफेंस यूएसए, पेटेंटेड टेक्नोलॉजी। They put up the plant in late 70s till 1991-92 तक वो लोग सारी रिफ्रैक्टरी ग्रिफिन से इंपोर्ट करते थे यूएसए से। जब इंडियन करेंसी की बड़ी हालत खराब हुई थी, फॉरेन एक्सचेंज वाज एट मिनिमम लेवल, उस समय पे प्रैक्टिकली इट वाज बैन्ड टू इंपोर्ट एनीथिंग बिकॉज आरबीआई के पास पैसे नहीं थे। तो उस समय इंडियन रेलवे ने सबको दिया मैसेज कि भाई आप ये बनाने के लिए प्रोडक्ट डिस्प्ले किया। उस समय 2 प्रोडक्ट, और एक संजोग बस एग्जीबिशन में मैं भी गया हुआ था उनके, एंड वो 2 प्रोडक्ट मुझे देखते ही लव एट फर्स्ट साइट जो कहते हैं, वो मुझे लगा कि ये तो प्रोडक्ट सिंपल लग रहा, बन सकता है। लॉट ऑफ पीपल मस्ट हैव ट्राइड, आई वाज लकी, एंड विद इन कपल ऑफ मंथ्स हम उसको बना पाए थे 2 प्रोडक्ट जो 100% इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूट हो गया था। और आज करीब 30 साल से वो प्रोडक्ट हम बना रहे हैं। अब हमारे यहाँ से दूसरे लोग भी अब बना रहे हैं, 2-3 लोग और हो गए हैं, तो वो भी एक आत्मनिर्भर हमने देश को बनाया हुआ है जिसमें मिलियंस, एंड इनफैक्ट वी आर एक्सपोर्टिंग नाउ दैट प्रोडक्ट। तो वहां पे भी हम आत्मनिर्भर बने हुए हैं। सिमिलरली हम लोगों का एंट्री कुछ साल पहले स्टील में हम कंटिन्यूअस कास्टिंग रूट में जाने के लिए वी हैव एंटर्ड विद सर्टेन प्रोडक्ट्स। उसमें वी आर फाइंडिंग डिफिकल्टी। एक्सपोर्ट हम काफी कर रहे हैं, वी एक्सपोर्ट एवरी मंथ मोर देन 1.5 crores टू यूरोप। लेकिन इंडियन स्टील इंडस्ट्री में, इंटीग्रेटेड स्टील प्लांट में वी हैव बिग डिफिकल्ट। जो चैलेंजेस आप कह रहे हैं, दैट इज अ चैलेंज बिकॉज दे आस्क द क्रेडेंशियल। The challenge for us is we make top class product, Europeans are buying, but the challenge is कि भाई आपके पास credential नहीं है। अब credential के लिए we were trying, I just give example, बोकारो स्टील में कई साल से चर्चा हो रही थी, तो उन्होंने हमारे ऊपर दया करके शायद उन्होंने दिया कि लेडल श्राउड में यदि आप आज की प्रोडक्ट से बेटर प्रोडक्ट दे सकते हैं तो शायद हम कंसीडर कर सकते हैं। Then we told them कि अच्छा बताइए आपकी क्या शर्तें हैं, तो they put up the शर्त कि लेडल श्राउड उनके SMS2 में, जिसमें की कैपेसिटी करीब 300 टन की होती है लेडल की, उसमें लेडल श्राउड they were buying with a guarantee of 6 hit परफॉर्मेंस का। They said कि यदि आप 7 हिट दे दें और मैनेजमेंट भी करें, उनका अनुभव मैनेजमेंट का 0 था, उन्हीं के लोग करते थे, तो हम लोगों का एक कहावत है कि बेगर कांट बी चूजर। तो वी एक्सेप्टेड दिस चैलेंज कि जिंदगी में कभी 300 टन की लेडल को हैंडल नहीं किया था, मैनेजमेंट का तो अनुभव 0 था, और सभी लोग 6 के ऊपर नहीं दे पा रहे हैं, तो 7 हमें देना था। तो ये चैलेंज हमारे सामने था, और एक अपॉर्चुनिटी भी थी। आपकी हेडिंग में ही मैं सारा चीज ढूंढ रहा हूँ कि अपॉर्चुनिटी थी कि यदि हम अपनी क्रेडेंशियल प्रूव करेंगे तो एक होगा। एंड दे गेव order for 12 pieces FOC basis पे, we should bring pieces as per their requirement, और वहां जाके चला के दिखाएं। हमने अपने टेक्निकल टीम को वहां डिप्यूट किया, दे परमिटेड अस कि भाई जाके देखो, सारी ड्राइंग देखे, we designed our own, and I'm very happy to tell you to everybody here that not a single piece failed below 7, but in fact हमारे पास 8, 10, 12 हिट तक लाइफ मिली थी, और सारे के सारे पीसेस सीक्वेंस ब्रेक होने पे हुए थे। नाउ उसकी सक्सेस पे नाउ दे आर गिविंग FOC से पे ट्रायल पे अब हमें ऑर्डर दिए 150 पीसेस का। नाउ वी आर इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ सप्लाइंग दैट वन। तो ये एक चैलेंज जो, और नाउ दिस विल बी द ट्रेंड ऑफ BSL। नाउ दे विल नॉट बाय फ्रॉम एनीबॉडी सप्लाई बेसिस पे। नाउ हम लोगों ने चूंकि ट्रेंड एक सेट कर दिया, करके दिखाया है, हमने एक चैलेंज एक्सेप्ट किया है, तो सभी के साथ वो करने जा रहे हैं। सिमिलरली एक सिंपल छोटा सा एग्जांपल दूंगा। एक चैलेंज था कि जो ये प्रेस पोर वाले हैं स्टील में, फाउंड्रीज होती हैं जो कंटिन्यूअस कास्टिंग करती रहती हैं, उसमें they use some stoppers, isostatically pressed stoppers and nozzles. Everybody, whoever was supplying so far, their life was around 2.5 to 3 days. उनकी प्रॉब्लम थी कि उनके संडे क्लोजर होता था और हफ्ते में 2 बार उनको बंद करना पड़ता था बिकॉज ऑफ दिस. व्हेन वी अप्रोच देम कि भाई हम भी प्रोडक्ट बना रहे हैं, हमारी भी लाइफ 2-2.5-3 दिन लेती है और हमें भी ऑर्डर दीजिए. दे सेड नहीं, यदि सबकी लाइफ 2.5-3 दिन है और आप भी देते हैं तो आपको हम क्यों दें, व्हाट इज द एडवांटेज. तो हमने बोला कि भाई बताइए कि आप किस शर्त पे देंगे. तो बोले यू गिव मोर देन दैट वन, कि हमें हमारी जो टारगेट है कि 6 दिन यदि आप लाइफ दें जिससे हम हफ्ते में 1 बार हमारी मशीन बंद हो, संडे का संडे हम क्लोज करेंगे और उसके बाद में हम काम करेंगे. वी सेड ओके, यू गिव अस एटलीस्ट, हमें 10-5 पीस का ऑर्डर देते रहिए एंड स्लोली विल इम्प्रूव. दे सर्टेनली उसको हमें मदद किया उन्होंने. आज की तारीख में हम पूरा 6 दिन की लाइफ दे रहे हैं उनको एंड दे आर वेरी हैप्पी. इनफैक्ट वी आर वर्किंग आउट कि 6 दिन तो देने के बदले 7-8 दिन की लाइफ दें, हम वो कर रहे हैं. सिमिलरली एक पेंसिल बनाने वाले का बेकिंग की प्रोसेस प्रॉब्लम थी. दे अप्रोच, उनको थर्मल शॉक से उनकी रिफ्रैक्टरी साइकिल क्रैक हो रही थी. इट वाज गिविंग हार्डली 8 to 10 हीट्स. उनको बार बार प्रॉब्लम आता था. दे अप्रोच अस कि हमारी एक डिफिकल्टी है, इफ यू कैन डू समथिंग बेटर. नाउ वी आर गिविंग लाइफ ऑफ 150-200 हीट्स. तो हम बहुत बड़े बिजनेस नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, लेकिन बहुत सारे लोगों की समस्याओं को जो आती है हमारे पास चैलेंजेस, वी हैव बीन एबल टू डू, वो सारी चीजें हम कर पा रहे हैं. कि हमारी जितने भी प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, मतलब उसके मैन्युफैक्चरर्स उंगली पे गिन सकते हैं. एक उंगली पे जितने भी आपके, उससे ज्यादा नहीं मिलेंगे. 2, 4, 10, 5 से ज्यादा नहीं मिलेंगे. तो इस फील्ड में हम लोग ऑपरेट कर रहे थे अभी तक, अभी भी कर रहे हैं. आपका जो क्वेश्चन था कि जिरकार नाम कैसे दिया, यस, ये हाइब्रिड नाम डिक्शनरी वर्ड नहीं है, हाइब्रिड है, मेरे इमेजिनेशन से किया हुआ. बिकॉज जिरकॉन जो है, जिरकॉन से हमने लिया था ZIR, और हमारी सारी प्रोडक्ट में कार्बन होता है, तो उसमें से कार लिया था एंड एक नाम दिया था, ट्विस्ट किया था मैंने जिरकार. और इनफैक्ट एक अमेरिकन कंपनी मेरे ऊपर केस करने जा रही थी कि उनका भी नाम था जिरकार. तो दे केम ऑल द वे और हमें कहे कि हम आपके ऊपर केस करेंगे, हमारी कॉपी किया है. तो मैं बोला भाई हमने तो कॉपी नहीं किया, हमने तो बनाया है. तो पूछे कि आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन कब है, हम बोले कि हमारा 96 में है. वो आपका कब है, तो उनका 2001 में है. तो हम बोले फिर तो आपने हमारी कॉपी किया है. जब 96 का रजिस्ट्रेशन हमने दिखाया तो वो हमारे ऊपर केस करने के लिए छोड़ दिए कि हमारे ऊपर दया कि हम केस नहीं करेंगे. अब मैं आपको आपके सब्जेक्ट पे जो हमारे चैलेंजेस और अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं, मैं उसके ऊपर मैं 2 शब्द कहना चाहूंगा. अभी तक के जो स्पीकर्स बोल रहे थे, उनकी कंपनी क्या कर रही है, वो सारी चीजें बताई जा रही थी. मैं बताऊंगा कि सबसे जो हमारी जो क्रूसिबल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में या कंटिन्यूअस कास्टिंग रिफ्रैक्टरी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में ऑलमोस्ट 90-95% रॉ मटेरियल्स आर इंपोर्टेड वन. यदि आप लेना चाहें टेबुलर एल्यूमिना तो बाहर से ला करके क्रशिंग यहाँ हो रही है. व्हाइट फ्यूज्ड एल्यूमिना, ब्राउन फ्यूज्ड एल्यूमिना, रिएक्टिव एल्यूमिना, सिलिकॉन कार्बाइड, नेचुरल ग्रेफाइट, बोरॉन कार्बाइड, एल्युमिनियम पाउडर, सिलिकॉन मेटल, परफ्यूरल अल्कोहल, यू नेम एनीथिंग, प्रैक्टिकली सारी की सारी चीजें इंपोर्ट करनी पड़ती हैं. तो रॉ मटेरियल्स की अवेलेबिलिटी, रॉ मटेरियल की प्राइसेस, फॉर एग्जांपल सिलिकॉन कार्बाइड वी इंपोर्ट ऑलमोस्ट 100 टन्स. ग्राइंडवेल नॉर्टन सालों पहले बनाता था, कार्बोरंडम बनाती थी, स्नैम एब्रेसिव बनाती थी, बट ड्यू टू इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कॉस्ट में कार्बोरंडम ने ग्राइंडवेल नॉर्टन ने शिफ्ट किया बेंगलोर से तिरुपति, तिरुपति से भूटान. वहां भी प्रैक्टिकली बन नहीं रही है, बहुत कम क्वांटिटी बन रही है. कार्बोरंडम मेक्स वेरी लिटिल क्वांटिटी, जो उनके कैपिटल कंजम्पशन के लिए भी सफिशिएंट नहीं है. स्नैम एब्रेसिव ने सालों पहले कॉस्ट की वजह से बंद कर दी. नौ सारे के सारे लोग चाइना के ऊपर में और रशिया के ऊपर डिपेंडेंट है. हम लोग इनसे भी थोड़ा थोड़ा मटेरियल लेते हैं, रशिया से लेते हैं. अब रशिया और यूक्रेन वॉर की वजह से मेरी सप्लाई सारी की सारी डिस्टर्ब हो गई है. नाउ अब सबको पता होगा कि देयर आर लॉट ऑफ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस, लॉट ऑफ सैंक्शंस, मटेरियल को अब रूट कर रहे हैं थ्रू ईरान और दुबई होकर के, उसमें कॉस्ट जो बढ़ती जा रही है। दीज आर द चैलेंजेस। और जो बायर इंडस्ट्री है, जो भी बायर्स हैं, वो एक्सेप्ट करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है कि आपकी प्राइसेस बढ़ गई हैं। गैस, हमारे सप्लायर गुजरात में जॉइंट वेंचर भारत पेट्रोलियम और गुजरात गवर्नमेंट का है, साबरमती गैस कहते हैं। दे इंपोर्ट द गैस, उसको गैसिफाई करके सबको सप्लाई करते हैं इंडस्ट्रीज में। उसकी प्राइसेस ऑलमोस्ट 2.5 टाइम्स बढ़ गई। अवेलेबिलिटी की प्रॉब्लम, उन्होंने रिस्ट्रिक्शन कर दिया अगेन बिकॉज ऑफ यूक्रेन और रशिया वॉर। तो ये सारी जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं कि जो मटेरियल्स की अवेलेबिलिटी, मटेरियल्स की प्राइसिंग, मटेरियल की सोर्सिंग, इट्स अ बिग चैलेंज। दूसरी साइड में मैं कहना चाहूंगा कि अपॉर्चुनिटी के लिए हमारे जो बड़े प्लेयर्स हैं, जो अभी तक जो आपने वेसुवियस का नाम लिया, ओसीएल का नाम लिया, ये कैलडरीज है, आरएचआई है, जो बड़े प्लेयर्स, दोज हु टाटा है, दोज हु कैन अफोर्ड रॉ मटेरियल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के ऊपर में क्यों नहीं चर्चा हो रही है? क्या रिफ्रैक्टरी इंडस्ट्री एक दूसरे से हाथ नहीं मिला सकती है? क्या हम बड़े प्रोजेक्ट नहीं डाल सकते हैं? व्हाई वी कैन नॉट गो टू अप्रोच टू द गवर्नमेंट कि हमें पावर में सब कुछ सस्ता कीजिए, कि ब्राउन फेज एल्यूमिना, व्हाइट फेज एल्यूमिना, टेबुलर एल्यूमिना, सिलिकॉन कार्बाइड यहीं पे बनाए? क्या हमारे जो बड़े ब्रदर्स हैं, क्या हमें मेडागास्कर से और ब्राजील से क्यों ले आना पड़ता है? व्हाई कैन समबडी टेक ओवर सम कंपनी देयर? जो सिनर्जी होनी चाहिए। एक्चुअली हम लोग एक दूसरे की शकल नहीं देखना चाहते हैं। केवल आपको मैं मतलब शुभकामना कहना चाहूंगा, थैंक यू कहना चाहता हूं कि आपने सबको कम से कम एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे ले आए, एक दूसरे की शकल देख रहे हैं। अदरवाइज एक दूसरे की जेब काटते हैं, टांग काटते हैं, गर्दन काटते हैं कि भाई उनकी प्राइस 500 तो 490 करने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो ये जो चीजें हैं बेसिकली अपॉर्चुनिटी, यदि मैं कहूँ कि खास करके बड़े प्लेयर्स, दोज हु कैन अफोर्ड टू इन्वेस्ट फ्यू हंड्रेड करोड़, फ्यू थाउजेंड करोड़, जिसमें वो करें, या हमारे जैसे छोटी कंपनी, जो वी आर अराउंड 100 करोड़ कंपनी, तो हमारे जैसे छोटे प्लेयर्स को भी कहेंगे तो हम भी कुछ 2, 5, 10 करोड़ हम भी डालने का सोच सकते हैं। ऐसा कोई वेंचर जिसमें सभी का स्टेक हो और कुछ कॉमन प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो सके। तो ये होगी, इसको मैं कह रहा हूँ कि बेसिकली यदि एक अपॉर्चुनिटी हो सकती है, जो आपके सब्जेक्ट था कि चैलेंजेस एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज के ऊपर में, दिस इज व्हाट आई वांटेड टू से। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू राय साहब, पॉइंट वेरी वेल टेकन। मैं 2-4 शब्द, आपका अगर आ गया हो तो मैं 2-4 शब्द इसमें कहना चाहूंगा। You know, when the sponge iron industry, you know, the sponge iron plants. Since I belong to the steel industry, so I can give you more of the examples of what happens in steel. The sponge iron industries are also very small in size. मतलब ये 10 TPD, 50 TPD, 100 TPD, मतलब and the standard size was the bigger ones were 350 TPD. तो इनका अब एक बहुत बड़ा समस्या जो रहा है, that is availability of coal for them. So I tried to bring in Ministry of Steel, Government of India, at the Joint Secretary level, and then various sponge iron associations, just to look at the idea if they can, the Government of India can come forward, Ministry of Steel, and help them. So what we found very clearly was, if there could be a consortium of these small players together, so that coal blocks could be allocated to them. Similarly, ये आप जो मतलब मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा आप जो इस बात को उठाए regarding the raw material availability in this country for the refractory industry. If you group together, that is why the Indian Refractory Makers Association is there. I mean, the job is to bring the smaller and the bigger players together. But unfortunately, जैसे आपने सही कहा, there are certain players who don't want to see eye to eye with each other. I have experienced this, at the beginning of the pandemic, when I tried to enter the refractory industry. What I found was that I was not being accepted by the association because there are their whims and fancies where they want to interact. Fortunately, people like, I would thank people like Mr. Samir Nagpal, Mr. Pramod Sagar, Mr. Ishmohan Garg. These were the people who said, no, let us break the myth. So there is always a challenge when you try to initiate something. Lekin you are perhaps one of the few players who came up with this idea that there is no demarcation between the smaller and the larger players. अभी मैं बहुत सारा प्रोग्राम जो है मैं मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ स्टील के साथ करता हूँ, तो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ स्टील को यही समस्या शुरू से रहा है. The bigger in large integrated players, they were not willing to sort of work together with the smaller players because ideologically, on technical terms, there were 1,001 differences of opinion. But then ministry came up with a circular saying that you cannot call them secondary steel producers. So the term secondary steel producers in the dictionary of the Ministry of Steel was removed, though we still keep calling them. But everywhere in the world, nowhere do we have the term primary producers and secondary producers. एक तो secondary जब हम बोलते हैं, we talk about secondary steel making. We don't talk about the smaller players in this country. So perhaps India is the only country where we have this kind of a situation we call primary producers and secondary producers. So that is why ministry had to come up with this idea. So now the philosophy behind removing secondary term was to ensure that everyone gets a level playing field. Just because you are a small player, you cannot be deprived of certain rights. For government projects, government orders, the Ministry of Steel has made it very clear. Everyone will have an equal opportunity to bid for those projects. Just because I am a secondary Sariawala, I cannot compete with JSW, SAIL, Tata Steel, ArcelorMittal, Nippon Steel. ऐसा नहीं है, SAIL नहीं है. I can also compete with Tata Steel. I can also compete with AMNS. I can also compete with JSW. And it is the techno-economic parameters and the end product which the customer has the right to choose. Okay, you can say because there is no secondary refining with some of the smaller players. You can have your point. But at the end of the day, everyone should get a level playing field. I think this point is very well taken, sir. And जो आप बोल रहे थे टॉपिक के बारे में, तो मैं दो शब्द उसमें भी बोल दूं. The idea जो समीर नागपाल जी ने अभी कहा, the idea is to make India a global hub for steel making. Today, it is a matter of pride for me as an Indian when I hear an Indian refractory producer, Pramod Sagar, is the chairman of World Refractory Association. It gives me an immense amount of pride. That means we as Indian refractory industry are well recognized throughout the world. Our industry is recognized. And we are not just the second largest producer of steel in the world, but we are a country to reckon with. A country where talent, technology, everything is available. Only thing is we need to rise above our petty interest. आज सोच लीजिए इंडिया में ऐसा सिंगल एसोसिएशन, आपका तो कम से कम रिफ्रैक्टरी एसोसिएशन सबका एक ही है. In India, we have various associations for various players. In steel industry, we have so many associations. Sponge iron का अलग है, ये आपका rolling mills का हर एक स्टेट का अलग है. So why can't we come under a single platform?
एक सवाल कर सकता हूँ?
Please.
देखें, जैसे डेमोक्रेसी में आदमी का एक को इलेक्ट कर दिया, MP MLA बना दिया, उसके बाद हम कुछ कर नहीं सकते हैं. हमारी एसोसिएशन इरमा, अब सवाल आता है कि इरमा की स्ट्रेंथ क्या है? इरमा के एग्जिस्टेंस में इतने सालों में व्हाट आर द टेंजिबल बेनिफिट्स members got from that? यदि उसको कोई लिस्टिंग करे, to become a president, to become a secretary, get it, अपने फोटो कहीं छपवा लिया, स्पीकर बन के चले गए. लेकिन यदि हम कहें कि थोड़ा एनालाइज करें कि what are the tangible benefits we have got as a association, तो शायद हम बहुत ज्यादा नहीं दिखेगी कि हमारी वॉइस बड़ी कमजोर है. अभी एक जेंटलमैन जो पहले स्पीकर थे, डॉक्टर समथिंग, डॉक्टर भूल रहा हूं नाम में, वो बड़ी अच्छी चीज कहे कि रिफ्रैक्टरी के बिना कुछ भी नहीं चलता है. आप जो सूट पहने हैं, आप जो चश्मा पहने हुए हैं, आप कुछ भी कर रहे हैं, कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता है. दवा भी नहीं खा सकते हैं, खाना भी नहीं पक सकता है, गैस वो नहीं निकल सकता, कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता रिफ्रैक्टरी के बिना। इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट इंडस्ट्री को जो ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट और रिकॉग्निशन होना चाहिए नहीं हुआ। वाई नहीं हुआ? बिकॉज वी आर ऑल वेरी स्कैटर्ड। हम एक दूसरे से लड़ रहे हैं, एक दूसरे को अप्रिशिएट नहीं कर रहे हैं, रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं कर रहे हैं। ऐसे आकर के हम बातें करते रहते हैं बड़ी बड़ी। बेसिकली वी ट्राई टू डू मार्केटिंग आवर कंपनी, आवर प्रोडक्ट, लेकिन एक कॉमन इंटरेस्ट की जो चर्चा होनी चाहिए वो मुझे मिसिंग दिखता है।
Thank you, sir. I think your point is well taken, and on my part, I can assure you, in every forum, अभी इस साल जो IRMA का जो अगला कॉन्फ्रेंस होने वाला है नवंबर में, I will ensure that there is an initiative taken to promote all the refractory manufacturers in this country, leave alone what size they are.
Thank you.
ये तो मैं कोशिश करूंगा. And today the world is open. You have a big social media which is available where everyone can air their views, come on a single platform, and in a small little way, अगर आप कोशिश करेंगे, हम सब करेंगे, विश्वनाथ जी करेंगे, कुमार साहब करेंगे, बाकी हमारे साथ, if you see, we have speakers right from the CGM of Bhilai to CGM in Durgapur Steel Plant to speaker Dr. Anant Kumar, who is the chief scientist from CSIR in National Institute of Indian Disciplinary Science and Technology. Then we have Arnab Bhattacharya from Vizag Steel Plant. So all these players, we have a speaker, Mr. Gautam Ghosh from Tata Steel. Then we have Mr. Kumar from Mekon. So all these speakers that we have today, they are your customers. Most of these gentlemen I'm talking about are your customers. So they also appreciate that fact that everyone must be given an equal opportunity. Whether it is JSW, Tata Steel, SAIL plants, everyone is of the opinion, everyone, because end of the day, as a customer, what do I want? I want a quality product at a reasonable cost. I want a quality product. And if I'm talking about the performance should be based on number of hits, so it should give me the performance at a most reasonable cost. That's my job. When I am given a responsibility to head the refractory unit of the plant, my job is to ensure that my company gets the best available product at the most reasonable price. So there the field is open to everyone. Anyway, मैंने बहुत बोल लिया, and I have taken more of Mr. Vishwanath's time than anyone else. So my apologies, Vishwanath साहब. आपसे एकदम तहे दिल से माफी मांग लेता हूँ. And the floor is all yours, sir. And you have no time limit. You can talk as much as you want. There is no problem, because we have 2 speaker dropouts already today. So you can make up for that time. So over to you, Mr. Vishwanath. Mr. Vishwanath, once again, is the Executive Vice President, SMS of Vijayanagar Works of JSW Steel. So over to you, Mr. Vishwanath.
Yeah, good evening, all refractory fraternity and steel industry participants, all panelists. Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee and Ankit, for giving this opportunity for us to interact with the team. And it was nice to hear Mr. Roy's criticism, literally for the first time. This voice has to start from all industrialists, refractory manufacturers. Somebody will take the lead. Thank you, Mr. Roy. You have opened the Pandora box. It will reap the results. 3-4 years back, when people were thinking of indigenization, some industries took the initiation alternatives. Refractory manufacturers, we cannot blame always the systems. We have to become the part of the system to enhance the system or improve the system or develop the system. If we keep ourselves aloof from the system, we cannot change the system. We cannot do any changes. Somebody has to bell the cat. You have started, and it will give results. As Nirmala was telling, he has created the forum for people to speak, and people will start joining. And with reference to recognition of Indian steel refractory industry performance, yes, people have started recognizing it is not only Atmanirbhar Bharat is getting reflected, sir. It is not only refractory. Now today, World Steel Dynamics, the chairman is Mr. Sajan Jindal, who started the business just in 90s, practically telling, with 0.8 million ton. Today, JSW Group is 28 million ton. And Indian refractory, always, as you were mentioning, we were dependent on UK, Germany for refractories. Slowly, things are changing. And the first step towards indigenization, alternative materials, we have to search steel manufacturing. As referred, it is almost 60% of the refractory goes to steel. Next takes cement, next comes non-ferrous, next comes glass. So major refractory raw material, alumina is available, magnesite, but they are not pure. As you were mentioning, the processing, electricity. Now people are going for green energy, green steel. All these hi-fi terminologies, what we are speaking, that is also is picking up in Indian steel industry, and it will slowly reap into refractory manufacturing also, recycling, as you are referring. Yes, people have started venturing, recycling more percentage of magnesite refractory, which is a rare commodity. The main thing is whether it is fused alumina, burnt alumina, or fused magnesite or sintered magnesite, you need electricity. Yes, now government has started giving subsidy for this solar, renewable energy. And as a first step, many industries are venturing for utilizing this opportunity. And in the industry itself, they are trying to go for solar energy to reduce the carbon footprint. And to the forum, I want to communicate JSW has already started 250 megawatt solar power, and it is taken to the plant as a captive capacity. We are in that way. So if opportunities are there, it is left to us to utilize the opportunity. As you said, somebody has to bell the cat. You have rang the bell. Yes, people will unite and this will happen. Otherwise, we cannot survive. As you told, globally, we are getting recognition. There are many other sources apart from China, which we have to tap and bring that potential, that raw material to India. That we have to do with the united proposal to the government of India, and we have to make it possible. As you are telling, leg pulling, unhealthy competitions, leads. No, this is part of the business, but as it is, the trend is changing. Just now you are quoting all these people earlier. Open discussion was not there regarding refractory industries. Now it has started. People have started realizing, yes, there is no survival if you move aloof. The main drawback in India for further development indigenous from the refractory, for Atmanirbhar Bharat, what we tell, we have to do a lot of research. That facility which we were not having, hardly one or two, like RDCS, Ranchi, other industries, one or two small scale they were doing. But now big players, yes, small player cannot invest that much. Big players like Vesuvius, RHA, they have brought this facility to India and it has started reaping result. Waste utilization, regarding waste utilization, people have started searching the sources. As per the latest information, Tata Refractories have started venturing in this processing of more percentage of recycled material, and they have got tied up with for 2,000-3,000 tons per month of waste refractory, which may further enhance. It is with 1 or 2 plants. This initiation of waste recycling has started, which may bring down to little extent the dependency on the China. But the need of the day is, in 90s, up to 2005, 2006, India was consuming, specifically steel industry, maximum refractory consumer was in the range of 13 to 13.5 kg. But in 2010 to 2020, started dropping down. People have started reaching 11 kg. But the market does not stay there. Consumption was in such a high level because of the quality of refractory what we are producing. As the quality improves, the performance increases, consumption comes down. That is where the R&D plays important role. International standards, if you see the refractory consumption wise, 7.8 kg per ton of total steel from iron ore to coil, soil to coil. Refractory consumption is in the range of around 7.8. Whereas even in India today, we are in the average Indian average of around 11.2, 11.3 kg. 1 or 2 plants exception, they are running at 9 kg. So this difference makes you more competent. Market is coming down, but you have to try to improve the quality of refractory which give this performance. Earlier, the productivity is the main thing which brings down the consumption. As the continuous production is there, refractory vessels going to be hotter and the consumption comes down. That is what the increasing trend of the performance of processes in all integrated steel plants or non-ferrous plants. The process standard is getting upgraded and bringing the refractory consumption down. So in this, when you go for cutthroat competition, there you are spoiling the image of this refractory competition. Why I am referring this is you were so aggressive in expressing. It is not so. Earlier it was there, but people are getting united. Now every one of us should join hands to uprise the approval of system, whether through government policies or research projects. One of the examples what I am giving, Atmanirbhar Bharat. In steel, integrated steel plant, if you consider total refractory, 30% is only steel atoms. Till now, nobody has ventured for alternative materials. One of the steel plant, example JSW, we started searching for alternative and developed it. Our refractory life was 180. Consumption was in the range of hardly 2.2. But we were expecting when the last crisis China created regarding all carbon materials, graphite electrode went up to 6, magnesia carbon went up to 45 rupees, 45,000 per ton. So that situation, we thought, let us venture something. Anyway, we are doomed. We started alumina spinner. 80% of the ladle refractory, we started using alumina spinel, balance 30 only slag zone reaction. We were using magnesia carbon. But today, blessing in disguise, all those alumina spinel is being done in India. We are consuming that part from India only. In 30%, 80% total refractories, we have made it Indian source. It's our only refractory, our refractory manufacturers are only giving. Yes, we have potential, You have to tap the potential, try alternatives, give opportunities for venturing. You have to take risks, which you have taken, and today we are reaping the result. So it is only a request to all refractory manufacturers to join hands for searching for alternative material, maximization of recycling, sinter, magnesia, bulk magnesia, fluid magnesia, which raw material which they are using. Yes, if work is done in that direction, it can be used. And there are many sources with 60-65% magnesia where you have to go for verification. Yes, initially it costs money. But when it comes to the cost of importing, nobody has expected the present global scenario. If you see crude oil, we were dependent on so many countries. The situation has created blessing in disguise. Crude oil, today we are importing 3.5 million tons. Suddenly, from 0.3 million, India was taking from Russia. Today we are taking 3.5 million. It is not good quality-wise, but India is the only country at present which are having the processes which can remove the high sulfur, which is present in the crude oil of Russian base. Now India has the potential to process more than 5 to 6 million and process it and send it back to Europe. This is the opportunity which we have to search for. And India has capability. It can become Atmanirbhar. Only every one of us has to join hands and work together to achieve this goal. Yes, we will face a lot of hurdles. But if we won't join our hands, if we go on blaming the systems, no system we can change since standing outside. We have to join hands, become part of the system, and system will change. It will happen. And we will achieve the goal. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vishal sir. I think
एक सवाल पूछ सकता हूँ?
Yes, Rai Saab. Sure, Rai Saab.
Sure.
देखें, जो इस तरह की बातें सुन करके बड़ा अच्छा लगता है. कॉमन गोल के लिए जो बातें हम कर रहे हैं या करना चाहते हैं या दूसरे लोगों के मन में, एवरीबडी इज फाइटिंग देयर ओन वॉर. हर कंपनी की अपनी समस्याएं हैं, अपने सोर्सिंग सिस्टम है, परचेज की क्वांटिटी के ऊपर में प्राइसेस नेगोशिएट होती हैं, टर्म्स होती हैं. Multinationals are in different situation because they are located at different places. तो मेरा दो चीजें मेरा कहना है. एक तो कॉमन गोल के लिए देयर शुड बी कुछ ऐसे ऑर्गेनाइज करें मिस्टर मुखर्जी मिल करके जो कि कॉमन सबको मिलवा सकते हैं. यदि कहीं कुछ मीटिंग ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे तो मुझे इनविटेशन मिलेगा तो मैं भी आना चाहूंगा. फॉर कॉमन बेनिफिट, बिकॉज individuals are going to die, industry will keep on changing head from one to other, लेकिन इंडस्ट्री रहेगी, रिफ्रैक्टरी इंडस्ट्री रहेगी, उसकी बेनिफिट्स डिराइव होती रहेगी. इंडस्ट्री है तभी तो 20 kg से आप 9 kg की बातें कर रहे हैं, 9 kg से 5 kg पे आ सकती है. इंडस्ट्री रहेगी तभी होगा. तो एक तो कॉमन गोल के लिए आई थिंक देयर हैज टू बी डेडिकेटेड कोई सिस्टम हो, टीम हो, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हो जो उसके ऊपर में चिंतन करे और टेंजिबल कुछ बेनिफिट्स लाए. उसकी बैलेंस शीट बननी चाहिए, उसकी असेट्स एंड लायबिलिटीज का एक टेबुलेशन होना चाहिए कि वी हैव जस्ट मेड अ कमिटी एंड देन व्हाट डिड वी डू, व्हाट डिड वी गेट, व्हाट द इंडस्ट्री गॉट इट फ्रॉम दिस वन. सेकंड थिंग मैं कह रहा हूं कि बड़े प्लेयर्स को हैंड होल्डिंग भी करनी चाहिए. छोटे प्लेयर्स में लाइक अस वी हैव लॉट ऑफ पोटेंशियल. हमारी सबसे बड़ी स्ट्रेंथ है टेक्नोलॉजी. हम टेक्नोलॉजी को बहुत अच्छी तरह समझते हैं. टेक्नोलॉजी को किसी भी लेवल पे जो बड़े नहीं कर सकते हैं वो हम कर सकते हैं. बड़े के यहाँ अपनी प्रॉब्लम्स होती हैं, बहुत बड़ा सेटअप होता है, बहुत सारे परमिशन लेने होते हैं, ढेर सारी अप्रूवल से लेनी पड़ती हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है कि नहीं करना है, ये बिजनेस वर्थ है कि नहीं है। छोटे सेटअप में कुछ नहीं। फॉर एग्जांपल कंपनी लाइक मी, ऑन द स्पॉट आई टेक डिसीजन, 10 लाख रुपए डालना है, इसमें फायदा होता है, कर लेंगे, चलो कर लेते हैं। तो आई थिंक द इंडस्ट्री में एक हैंड होल्डिंग की कुछ प्रोसेस यदि हो, वेयर the people whoever is interested to do something new R&D, new product development, नई चीज, नए challenges करने के लिए, तो हैंड होल्डिंग वाला यदि कोई सिस्टम हो कि जिसमें लोगों का एनकरेजमेंट हो, लोगों को उत्साह हो कि हम कुछ अच्छा करना चाहते हैं। और दूसरी चीज मैंने बोला कि भाई कॉमन गोल के लिए, कॉमन ऑब्जेक्टिव के लिए, इफ देयर कैन बी सम टीम, एसोसिएशन, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कोई भी ऐसी चीज जिसमें बेनिफिट सभी को डिराइव हो, एज ए इंडस्ट्री को डिराइव हो, इंडस्ट्री को डिराइव होगी तो बायर के पास ऑटोमेटिकली पास ऑन हो जाएगी। ये मैं कहना चाहता था। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू राय साहब। इसमें बस दो बात मैं ऐड करूंगा। ड्यूरिंग द पैंडेमिक, when we started with the pandemic in 2020, so I did a series of webinars, क्योंकि तो फिजिकल कॉन्फ्रेंस होने की चांस नहीं थी, तो हमने ये webinar series जब शुरू किया, the first webinar we did on refractories, we brought in the Minister of State for Steel, Sri Fargan Singh Kulaste, and we also brought in Dr. V.K. Saraswat, who is known as the Missile Man of India, who is now a member of Niti Aayog. So he went into the depth of the subject. The first day when I invited Dr. Saraswat to speak on this occasion, so he said that I went into the depth, I dug into the subject, and I realized that this is really an industry which needs support. And when bodies like Niti Aayog, they come in and look at the, एक तो आपको समझना पड़ेगा, this is only a 10,000 crore industry. So obviously there are bigger choices where you dig in first. Then look at segment which has a net value of 10,000, 11,000 crore. पूरा इंडस्ट्री का वैल्यू है 10 to 11,000 crore, which is I would say minuscule when it comes to other industries. But in spite of that, we met at a point to ensure both Ministry of Steel, Niti Aayog, they look at the subject very carefully. Then we brought in the director of IAMT, Institute of Minerals and Materials Technology, जो पहले मतलब ये RRL हुआ करता था, Regional Research Laboratory, which is based in Bhubaneswar. So their director, who is now also the director of CFRI, Central Fuel Research Institute, Dr. Satto Bandhavata, so he came in and he took an interest and mentioned that any refractory producer, अभी संजय कोहंडी जी थे, अभी तो नहीं है, but there he has a private laboratory for research work. You have IIMT, Government of India has various research institutes under CSIR, and they are willing to jointly develop. One of the great things which Mr. Vishwanath mentioned was, one was of course recycling, which Mr. Pramod Sagar also mentioned in his message, and the other is recycling of refractory products is definitely a way forward. Looking at alternate materials, development of alternate materials is also, and you have to understand that gradually, as the industry progresses, consumption will come down. Consumption of refractories, जैसे आप बोल रहे थे, it has come down from 20 kgs to 11 and 12 kgs, and further down to about 7 to 8 kgs is what we are looking at. Even if it's down to say below that. So what we need to develop actually is value-added refractories, where you add value to your end product. And at the end of the day, you have to understand the customer also needs to cut down their cost. Today, a big challenge for the Indian steel industry is also because of the additional export duty which has been imposed. And JSW, I think, was the first who came forward and said, we are going to export anyway, without passing down, that additional export duty to the end customer. So JSW, set an example. आप बोल सकते हैं JSW is too big to do all this. We cannot do, but when you are consolidated, consolidate yourself in a single body, as an association, as a consortium, there are so many options you can throw to the customer. you can say, okay, fine, I'm willing to go for a performance guarantee test. Give me an opportunity to give you an opportunity to serve you. I think days are coming when, gradually it will be not a seller's market anymore. It is already a time when, you have too many players in the market. More are in the offing. So ultimately, it is the buyer's market. The buyer will have to choose. And having said that, I think the most pertinent issue as of today is to bring down the energy cost. So the refractory producer must look at ways and means to bring down his energy cost, which in turn will have the customer to bring down his cost of production. I think Mr. Vishwanath will also agree with me, Mr. Kinshuk Bhattacharya, who is our next speaker. I'm sure will have something to add this, because Bhilai is one plant. Bhilai is one plant which is known as the flagship plant of SAIL. We always keep saying, and the director in charge of that plant, Mr. Anirban Dasgupta, is someone who I know him for many, many years, from the days he was in chairman's office, and is a good friend of mine. So he has taken this initiative from his plant also at Bhilai, and Bhilai has achieved always the biggest landmark when it comes to the entire SAIL operative. Entire SAIL collective is always proud of what Bhilai does. So Mr. Kinshuk Bhattacharya will now highlight what are the challenges at the Bhilai steel plant, and what is the way forward. So over to you, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Good evening to all of you. Mr. Mukherjee, I have got a short presentation on the subject. Yes.
Please go ahead. You can share your screen.
Yes. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you in this webinar. As you all know, world has been severely impacted by the COVID pandemic, due to which world has witnessed significant economic slowdown. Steel industry has also been not an exception in this case. Entire fraternity had put in extremely dedication and hard work in striving back to normalcy. SAIL ended 21-22 with 17.36 million ton and 16.15 million ton of crude steel and saleable steel respectively. And SAIL has targeted production over 20 million ton of crude steel production in 22-23. Accordingly, the refractory requirement will also go up, and our refractory manufacturers have to come up to the situation. With the demand of cleaner steel, the steel making parameters are becoming more and more stringent and severe. This demands improvement in refractories quality to sustain the severity of process and produce cleaner steel. The steel industry forms the major end user segment for refractories, consuming around 70% of the total annual production of refractories. Refractory industry has to keep pace with the steel industry with respect to quantity and quality demands. Expenditure on refractory amounts to around 2 to 3% of total steel making costs, but it plays a major role in determining the effectiveness of steel making process. The average refractory consumption of refractories in Indian steel industry varies from 9 to 14 kg per ton of steel. About a decade ago, it was around 30 kg for every ton of liquid steel. Some of the leading steel manufacturers in India have achieved still lower specific refractory consumption. Their average consumption is around 7 to 8 kg per ton of crude steel, which is comparable to the world's best figure of 6.5 kg by Nippon Steel. Given the current technology, the current benchmark average specific consumption level is 7 to 8 kg per ton of crude steel, which will be achievable for a handful of good steel producers. World demand for refractories is forecast to rise. Growth will be supported by the increasing use of better performing, more expensive refractories, which will bolster demand in value terms. The refractory industry in India has to take measures for augmenting their facilities for manufacturing more of sophisticated products to meet the requirement of end users. Higher refractory lining life not only reduces the direct refractory cost, instead it increases the equipment vessel availability for higher production. In the changed business scenario, more and more customers are looking forward to total refractory management, which encompasses creation of value-added service, responsibly supply chain network, and most importantly, a thorough understanding of customers' requirements. The refractory industry needs to emerge from its present role of product supplier to that of a total service provider. To achieve this, both manufacturer and customer should work together as strategic partners for selection, design, installation, and maintenance of refractory lining, as well as optimizing the operating parameters for desired camper life. This demands a common platform for interaction among input suppliers, manufacturers, and end users. For specialized and critical items like carbon and graphite blocks, there is no indigenous vendor. For items like RS snorkel sets, converter sets, and electrofused cast blocks, there are very limited vendors base available in India. Refractory manufacturers should come forward and develop these products indigenously. Now I will move to the slides. Mr. Mukherjee, can I go to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Mr. Mukherjee, am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, just give me
hello. Sir, hello.
Yeah,
am I audible?
Can you move to the next
Yeah,
slide?
yeah, you are audible.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah, next slide, please.
I think there is some issue on his end. I will share the screen. Just give me a moment. Yeah.
Yes, the role of refractories, as I was telling, steel, iron, cement, and glass are made under some of the most challenging conditions of very high temperatures, at times approaching to 2000 degrees centigrade. Refractories are what support the production of these materials. The materials that pass through this process are used in many of the everyday objects around us, such as automobiles, buildings, home appliances, mobile phones, beverage cans, furniture. Many don't know this, but refractories are the material at the very foundation of our daily lives. Next. As you can see, the iron and steel industry constitute the major consumer of refractories. The others are glass, cement, and non-ferrous metals. Next. As I have already said, the specific consumption of refractories per ton of steel is varying from 9 to 14 kg per TCS in the integrated steel plants across India, whereas the consumption rate across the best steel plants in the world is around 7 to 8 kg per TCS per ton of crude steel. The global refractories market is projected to reach around US $36.17 billion by 2022. By volume, the projection will be around 556.83 million tons by 2022. These are the major Indian refractory manufacturers, out of whom many are present today. Messrs. Calderies, Messrs. Dalmia, Messrs. Hitech, Messrs. IFGL, Khemkai Refractories, Maithan Ceramics, RHI Magnesita, Sarvesh Refractories, TRL Kosaki, Vesuvius India, Vishwa Vishal Engineering, and Zarkar Refractories, to name a few. There are other manufacturers also. Next. China is blessed with enormous deposits of refractory raw materials, magnesite and bauxite being the major part of the raw materials. Availability of cheaper energy sources and labor facilitates raw material processing industries in China. Australia, Brazil, Turkey, Ireland are the other global sources of refractory grade magnesite. Guyana in South Africa has deposits of refractory grade bauxite apart from China. Apart from China, flaky graphite is also available in South Africa. The second largest reserves of natural magnesite is Russia. However, they do not mine or process the magnesite to produce refractory grade magnesia to fulfill the global requirements. Salem region in Tamil Nadu and Almora region in Uttarakhand have deposits of magnesite in India. Impurities present in these magnesites makes them unsuitable for high-end refractory applications. Salem region magnesite contains high amount of silica, whereas Almora magnesite has high iron content. India has bauxite deposits in Saurashtra region of Gujarat, Bastar, Loharadanga region of Bihar. Due to the presence of high impurities, mainly high iron content, application of these materials in refractory is very limited. India has graphite reserves in Tamil Nadu, Chota Nagpur areas. However, low fixed carbon content restricts their application in high-end refractory production. Very high, the major factors for going towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, which I have analyzed, are the very high raw material costs from imported sources. The sea freight charges have gone very high. The restrictions for doing business with the countries having land border sharing disputes with India, and the high lead time, not getting the materials in required time. Actually, the steel industry at present, especially our plant and other cell plants, are facing these difficulties, and we are facing a lot of difficulties in pricing of the refractory materials that were being supplied maybe 1.5 years, 1 year back, and now the prices have become very high, and those prices are volatile also. And the sea freight charges have increased also, which are giving an impact on this total refractory cost. And also this land border sharing with mainly with China has resulted in this sort of situation. Next. Refractory industry has the largest application in the steel industry globally. Demand for special refractories for critical applications with longer life is ever increasing. These special refractory applications are to be developed indigenously here at India, because otherwise our productivity in steel industry cannot increase. So to increase the productivity of steel, the production of steel as a whole, the special refractory applications for critical applications are to be indigenously developed in India. Next. The increasing infrastructure and construction activities in the developing economies such as India and other economies worldwide are contributing abundantly to the steel consumption and henceforth increasing refractory usage, as you know. Next. The most markets in the world are degrowing in steel production, while India continues to be an ambitious growth trajectory. Hence, it is imperative for India to delink to the extent possible from the refractory material sourcing from China and develop local sources. While we continue to invest in enhancing local refractory production, much needs to be done on the raw material side, because the main constraint is the availability of raw material. Next. The actions required, which I have jotted down, are the recycling of used refractory materials needs a boost, because there are a lot of refractory materials which are being used, and if they are recycled, we can make new refractory items through them. And if the steel makers should segregate, classify and store salvage bricks properly for their reuse without any further deterioration of quality, refractory makers needs to maximize the use of these materials after due processing to reduce use of virgin raw materials from abroad. Exploring the possibility of acquiring a captive magnesite mines at Russia by Indian manufacturers, because Russia has got a huge deposit of magnesite ore, but they are not mining on it. And if this possibility can be thought of acquiring a captive magnesite mine by Indian manufacturers as an alternative source for producing refractory grade magnesite to meet the requirements. Academic and research institutions should come forward to provide the required quality of input raw material for refractory applications. Large investment may be encouraged to produce refractory grade magnesia by extracting magnesium salt from seawater. So seawater magnesia may be encouraged upon by investment as required. Cheaper and green sources of energy may be utilized to produce fused magnesia in India. As you know, the magnesia is of mainly three types which we are using. One is dead burn magnesia, one is seawater magnesia, and another is synthetic sintered magnesia. This dead burn magnesia is made from magnesite ore by calcination. From MgCO3 we get MgO at a 1700 to 1800 degrees centigrade. And in seawater magnesia from magnesium chloride, the salt present in seawater, we extract MgO from MgOH2. And in synthetic sintered magnesia, which is a very small deposit are available near Netherlands as magnesium chloride, that deposit is available. The sintered magnesia is made there. But the fused magnesia, which is being made by China, was in a very large scale in electric arc furnaces for preparing this fused magnesia. The encouragement to be given to our manufacturers to set up industries for manufacturing fused magnesia in India with the availability of cheaper and green sources of energy will be of great use or great encouragement for the Indian manufacturers of refractory. And setting up industry for producing synthetic alumina based raw material like fused or tabular alumina may help to overcome the dependency on China. Next. There is a need to support the refractory industry with a better mining policy, allocate funds for research and development for generating high quality supply of domestically produced raw material in India, providing export incentives. As someone was telling, the export duties, as Mr. Mukherjee was telling, export duties are to be brought down to encourage domestic production for maximizing the capacity utilization. The capacities of Indian manufacturers are quite high, only 50 to 60% may be being used at this time. This may be taken up for if the export incentives are given to encourage the domestic production, the Indian manufacturers can come up. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya, for your presentation. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kingshuk Bhattacharya?
Bhattacharya, one more information I wanted to share with you regarding RH snorkels. Earlier, JSW Group used to import 100%. Today, we are taking 100% from Indian sources. It is possible. We have to support our manufacturers. DRL, OCL, these people are manufacturing here in India. And yes, we compromise the life in the initial stages, but it is working well. Unless we support, we try, give platform to them, I don't think it will be easy for them to move forward.
Yes, yes, we are supporting the Indian manufacturers as well.
Yeah.
We are also taking from OCL, and we are having the second manufacturer as RHI Magnesita here in our shop. But the difference is there. The life that we are getting has to be improved upon.
Yes, suddenly if market closes, it happened. So for 5 to 6 months, you are nowhere. International market, they started controlling the majority of the manufacturing was in China, which was routed through China, whether RHI or anybody. They used to give from China only. So that lesson taught us, yes, let us support Indian manufacturers themselves so that your process is also done straightly. Yes, we dropped down life in the beginning, but now we are coming to normal stage, what we are achieving even with imported source.
Yes, right, sir.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Now we will move on to our next speaker, To get a different perspective from the same organization, we have Mr. A.K. Sinha, Chief General Manager, Refractory, Durgapur Steel Plant, SAIL. So over to you, Mr. Sinha.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm thankful to this organization and the organizers of this webinar to give which gave me an opportunity to interact with so many people and get so many ideas from different speakers. As far as Atmanirbhar Bharat is concerned, this initiative was taken mainly to use indigenous sources in all sectors in India, so that India can become self-reliant, and dependency on other players, the global players, the companies, the organization outside India should become less and less, because it has already been seen in past that factors such as economic conditions, political unrest, Eurozone shutdown, and China's export policy, it has badly affected our raw material supply as far as the refractory industry is concerned. So the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative itself is aimed at developing the indigenous manufacturers and the suppliers of refractory. And as far as the public sector undertakings are concerned, we, Steel Authority of India Limited, being a part of the public sector undertaking, we have already got the guidelines under this Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme, that we have to go through the government e-marketing portal for all the materials having less than 200 crores value. And so you will find that in past, what the refractory manufacturers in India were having a competition with the global suppliers like RHI International, Samhwa, Puang, and so on. Now the competition has become less. They have to compete with the companies which are manufacturing in India. But even if this is a opportunity for them, but at the same time, it is a challenge also, because the material, the raw material, as most of the speakers have said, the raw material which they are getting, they are mostly importing it from outside. Until this import will be there, their dependency on the outside players will depend. And as Mr. Kingsuk Bhattacharya was telling, the freight charges and the policies of the governments, different countries, what they are having, it is affecting a lot as far as the raw material supply is concerned. So, in my opinion, it is very much necessary that these people, the manufacturers of refractory in India, they have this challenge before them, that they have to develop some R&D centers in India, some for development of quality raw material, even after beneficiation of Indian origin raw materials, so that we can depend mostly on the supplier of raw material from India itself, as Carborundum and other companies are there. As far as the bigger players are concerned, like RHI India, then TRL, then other big manufacturer like Vesuvius and Dalmia Bharat Refractories Limited, they all are having some sort of consortium, because they are playing in a different way, but and they are helping each other for developments. But the small players, the suppliers from the south, especially those who are having some sort of capacity to supply raw materials for refractory, they don't have any such facility. So I think, as it was told earlier also, it is needed that these suppliers, they may have a common platform, as the manufacturers of refractory are having a common platform. So they should also have a common platform where they can demand for some funds from the government for R&D, and the laboratories, as Mr. Dr. Sanjay Pande was telling, these type of organizations should also come forward to help them, so that they can also start upgrading their quality of raw material, so that they can be among one of the players. Now, as far as sale is concerned, you will see in Durgapur steel plant, once there was a crisis of magnesia carb bricks for steel ladles, and during that period, TRL and other organizations, they came forward and they have indigenously developed dolomite refractory bricks, which was a substitute of magnesia carb bricks, and it has successfully established the use of these materials. Similarly, as Mr. Viswanathan was telling, in aluminum kiln in JSW, they are using zirconia spinel. So these type of developments are taking place, but the need of the hour is that these development should take a faster pace, so that the dependency on other countries may be reduced. Otherwise, you will see, for example, as far as Atmanirbhar Bharat is concerned, the refractory industries have got so many opportunities, like it has given us a chance to develop industries in India, so that the job creation is there. Then as far as when the material used to come from outside, the transportation cost was very, very high. Compared to that, the Indian manufacturers can supply the material to the steel plants at a lower cost of transportation. Similarly, they have less competition, but the scope for development of industrial indigenous industries is also there. Like you will see that champion ceramics are coming up for magnesia carb bricks in steel ladles, and so you will find that opportunities are there. But at the same time, challenges are also there, because till now, availability of raw material is a very big issue for us. And if we depend on the raw material for coming from other countries, then the volatility of raw material price and supply of raw material, all these we have to face. Similarly, the political conditions around the world, it is already affecting the fuel price, like cost of diesel, pet coke and coal, everything is increasing, and that also is affecting the cost of production as well as the cost of transportation. So for countering these factors, they have to go for some automation process, so that their cost of production may be less, and accordingly they can compete with other parties also. And you see, even if in steel industry we are facing a lot of problem due to high cost of coal, imported coal, but when we go to the market, we cannot say that because we are getting coal at very high price, our steel price will be high. No, we have to compete with the market. Similarly, the consumer of the refractory products, mainly the steel plants, they also expect that these high cost of raw material or volatility in the raw material price of refractory, they should be countered by some optimization of the process and automation of the process during refractory manufacture, so that the cost can be controlled. And as far as the point that Mr. HL Rai was telling, like credential. Actually, Rai Sahab, this credential part becomes important for us because you will see in different steel plants, there are different structures. For example, in Durgapur steel plant, we have got a single SMS, single steel melting shop, where 3 converters are there. Now, if we go for a trial without getting the credential of the party, and if it fails, then the whole process of Durgapur steel plant will fail. Whereas in other plants, they are having 2 SMS or 3 SMS like that. Even if they use these materials and it fails, then they won't be affected that much. So you will have to choose a plant where possibility of trial is much more and more, because it will give you a chance, and once you get a chance in those plants, then you become eligible for supplying material to our plant also. So this you will have to follow that path, go to there and then establish and then come to us, then we will also be able to be a partner in your progress. So this is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Do we have any questions for Mr. A.K. Sinha?
सिन्हा साहब से मेरा सवाल है
जी पूछिए
कि हमारे ऊपर यूरोपियन बायर्स विश्वास करने लगे हैं, एंड वी बाय अबाउट 1.5 करोड़ रुपए का कंटिन्यूअस कास्टिंग प्रोडक्ट ऑलमोस्ट एवरी मंथ. आई एम गोइंग टू नेक्स्ट वीक, आई एम गोइंग टू यूरोप, आई एम टॉकिंग ऑन दिस सब्जेक्ट. वो हमारे ऊपर भरोसा करे, मतलब हम लोग MBS 2 मीटर लंबे सप्लाई करते हैं, 2 मीटर्स लॉन्ग, जिसका वेट है करीब 130 किलो. और हम यहाँ पे हम उस तरह के जैसे हैं जो कि बीटेक गोल्ड मेडल किया हो और अनुभव नहीं है, और उससे इंटरव्यू में पूछा जाता है कि बच्चा तुम्हारा कहाँ अनुभव कितना है, वो कह नहीं पाता है. तो हम ऐसे दलदल में फंसे हुए हैं कि अनुभव जुटाते जुटाते मेरे सर के सारे बाल गिर गए हैं. तो सिन्हा साहब, आपसे मेरी गुजारिश है कि थोड़ा हमारे सर पे बाल हुआ दीजिए. यही मैं कहना चाहूंगा.
राय साहब, एक्चुअली चीज क्या है ना कि अगर हमारे यहाँ रिफ्रैक्टरी इंडस्ट्रीज का एक R&D सेंट्रल कुछ इस तरह का होता, जो मटेरियल की क्रेडेंशियल जो हम लोग इंडिविजुअल से मांगते हैं, अगर वो R&D के थ्रू से आता है, तो फिर वहाँ वो एस्टेब्लिश R&D का जो सर्टिफिकेट्स होता है, वो itself becomes a credential. बट अभी तक अनफॉर्चुनेटली रिफ्रैक्टरी इंडस्ट्री में इंडिया में इस चीज की कमी है. अभी भी कोई उस तरह का वेल एस्टेब्लिश्ड लेबोरेटरी जहां से हम लोग जिसके ऊपर फुल्ली डिपेंड कर सकें और वहां पर नए नए प्रोडक्ट भी डेवलप हो, जो एग्जिस्टिंग प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जिसके लिए हम बाहर की सप्लाईज पर डिपेंड करते हैं, उसको रिप्लेस कर सके, तो इसमें फायदा होगा. तो लेट अस होप कि फ्यूचर में इसका बेनिफिट्स मिलेगा हम लोगों को.
सिन्हा साहब, LS में तो कोई प्रॉब्लम विशेष नहीं होती है. LS तो तुरंत चेंज हो सकता है.
LF मतलब हम लोग तो रिफ्रैक्टरी यूज करते हैं स्टील लैडल्स में, और स्टील लैडल्स जब LF में जाता है और LF में जब उसको वहां पर जब आर्किंग होता है और ब्लो किया जाता है, तो उस समय अगर थोड़ा भी कहीं मटेरियल फेल किया और लैडल में कहीं रेड स्पॉट आया या कहीं से थ्रू हो गया लैडल, तो वो पूरे जो मटेरियल अभी हम लोग 130 टन का लैडल यूज करते हैं, जो मटेरियल फेलियर होगा वो तो होगा ही, बट एट द सेम टाइम वो प्रोसेस को डिस्टर्ब कर देगा पूरा. ये इशू जाता है. बट फिर भी हम लोग कुछ तो इसमें अपना जो क्राइटेरियाज है उसको धीरे धीरे मॉडिफाई कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज जब आत्मनिर्भर भारत में रहना है तो वेंडर बेस तो बढ़ाना है. वेंडर बेस वो 2-1 में अगर हम लोग रहेंगे तब तो विल बी अगेन डिपेंडेंट ऑन देम. तो इसलिए वेंडर बेस बढ़ाने के लिए हम लोग कुछ तो स्टेप्स ले रहे हैं, कहीं कहीं पर हम लोग आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, इनिशिएटिव्स ले रहे हैं, बट कहीं कहीं पर है कि हम लोगों का कुछ रिजर्वेशंस रहता है. तो रीजन वही है, बिकॉज इफ यू हैव गॉट सिंगल रूट, उसमें एक भी प्रोसेस डिस्ट्रप्शन आने से वो पूरा का पूरा रूट डिस्टर्ब हो जाता है. तो जहां पर इसका अल्टरनेटिव्स है वहां पर इट बिकम्स इजियर.
Mr. Sinha, we have a question from Mr. R.K. Hota from the audience. Mr. Hota, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Mr. R.K. Hota, can you hear me? Okay, I think there is some issue from his end. In that case, Mr. Hota, you can post your question in the chat and then it will be answered by Mr. Sinha. So we will move on to our next presenter. We have Dr. S. Anantakumar. He's the Chief Scientist, Ceramics, Activity, Material Science and Technology Division, CSIR, National Institute for Interdisciplinary Science and Technology, Thiruvananthapuram. So over to you, Dr. Anantakumar.
Thank you very much, and very good evening to all of you. And I would like to share the screen now.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I hope that the screen is visible to all of you.
Yes.
Yeah. And yes. So I am Dr. S. Anantakumar from CSIR NIST Trivandrum. And I am hearing for the last 3 hours, I had been hearing from all the industrial experts and very common issues in this refractory industry based on the raw materials consistency, raw materials quality, raw materials availability, import substitution, performance, and the cost effectiveness, and also its compatibility with various processing methods. Of course, you are all in this area for more than 30-40 years, and some players are very new. But what I feel as a scientist for the last 30 years, I am working in this area of ceramic materials. And of course, very good institutions are paying their research efforts on refractory sector also, but not exactly. Very few institutions only pay huge attention to the refractory sector development. What is going to be there for this industry in 2050? What will be the steel production in 2050? And where are we go for getting the end product like refractories? And in the last 10 years, if you look at, not much R&D is taking place in the advanced refractory materials. For example, many of these steel plant and steel melting industries, they never change their conventional refractory items in their production. And in fact, all of them are mostly engineers, and none of the engineers pay attention to develop any alternate refractory materials for their production applications. And they all would like to only stick to basic refractories which was invented 100 years before. And they never, in fact, accept any new things in the refractory sector. So in fact, I am from CSIR lab, and you know very well about CSIR lab. But particularly, this is my institution, NIST Trivandrum. And this NIST Trivandrum was earlier known as Regional Research Laboratory Trivandrum. Here we have, in fact, we don't have steel industry, but we have titanium plant, like the Triangle Titanium plants and KMML. And this particular institute, the ceramics activity is basically on advanced materials. And we develop a lot of advanced materials for high temperature sector, because this Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Orissa, it is blessed with a lot of beach sand minerals. And this beach sand minerals, they have an excellent ores like monazite. And from monazite, we can get a lot of high temperature materials, which can be definitely used as a protective coatings. So as a scientist, we are investigating the multifunctional properties of these high temperature materials. And I would like to disclose some of my research activities, which I am carrying it for the last 15 years. and something is very much relevant to refractory sector. And I will be happy if any question comes after this presentation. So of course, we are working for energy. And in fact, the steel sector is directly associated with energy. And right now, we all are talking about CO2 emission. In fact, steel plant and cement plant, they are contributing a lot for CO2 emission. And one side, we are talking about CO2 release, and we cannot avoid this as long as our business is on steel and cement. So somehow we have to take care of the emission part, and at the same time, find out some new alternatives to overcome this issue. And for example, some of the scientific advances which had happened very recently is that the prediction of the dynamics and reduction in energy consumption by CFD modeling, and similarly, the multi-scale modeling of refractory lining. In fact, Japan has introduced the phenol-free resin-bonded bricks, and now the CO2 release from this resin, so-called carbon pitch, or it is phenolic resin, now it is taken care. And in fact, another major challenges is the larger shapes of refractories in furnace design. And in fact, hydrogen energy is coming up in a big way. And if the hydrogen energy is utilized for the refractory, for the steel and cement sector, how it will react with refractories? And in fact, is there any other new material like aerogels where we can introduce this kind of ultra low thermal conducting aerogel to replace the conventional refractories? And how can we avoid the wettability of this molten steel with the refractories? And how can we introduce the hydrophobic, high temperature hydrophobic characteristics so that it does not react with any water vapor or steam or something like that? And similarly, what is the low thermal mass refractory binders and cement? So all those things opening up a new avenue for the research and development side. We are all taking care of these things. And I will quickly go through what we are there in CSIR, Mr. Trivandrum. And in fact, these are all only the mapping of the high temperature materials. And in the last few years, we had been working in the area of ultra low thermal conducting materials like aerogels. And how can we make a high temperature stable materials, especially for the ceramic binders, refractory coatings, and how to improve the creep resistance of all the things. So similarly, aluminum titanate like low thermal expansion material, and how can we utilize the Indian kaolin raw material for making a functional refractories. And these are all some of the scientific data I am presenting, how these materials will be very effective in terms of low thermal conductivity and also in terms of high temperature performance. In fact, we are very good in making the nano binders or nano refractory binders or ultra high temperature stable ceramic binders, and where we can definitely overcome or we can, how can I say that, to replace the conventional phenolic polymer binders in the refractory sector. And this is one item. This is basically from the rare earth phosphate, which is available from Indian Rare Earths Limited here itself in India. We need not depend on any other foreign countries for this material, which is a rare earth phosphate material, excellent thermal stability, very low thermal conductivity, matching compatibility, thermal expansion coefficient, everything is there in this material. And this can go very well with mullite, very well with magnesia, very well with alumina, very well with silica. And none of them have tried to utilize this kind of composite materials for the refractory applications. And we can create nano size particles of that so that we can get a functional refractories from this nano size rare earth materials. And in fact, it naturally exhibits hydrophobic property. And similarly, we can convert that into a kind of lightweight materials like foams. And these foams are also, and we introduced this into alumina and find out how the thermal shock resistant of alumina can be enhanced. And in fact, this kind of nano binders act as a damage tolerant materials as far as this alumina as well as other low thermal shock resistant materials are concerned. And we had created some composite structures and we validated it. And in fact, many people are looking for improving the low thermal conductivity. That means to maximize the energy gradient, the thermal gradient inside the furnace atmosphere. So we are also working on a kind of high emissivity material where we can again and again push back the heat energy into the furnace so that the thermal diffusivity is very low. And in that aspect, we have made a kind of ultra low thermal conducting rare earth coating material for the refractories. And you can see here some of the data, and moving to a kind of aerogel, which is a recent advances in this refractory sector, where the thermal conductivity is extremely low and thermal stability is extremely high. And we could create this kind of granular aerogel materials, and this aerogel material can made into a composite design also. And you can see here the plot shows that the incorporation of this kind of advanced reinforcement in the conventional materials, where we can drastically reduce the thermal conductivity and thermal diffusivity. And in fact, this is another rare earth silicate material where we can get a hydrophobicity, high temperature hydrophobicity. It's not a room temperature hydrophobicity. And this is another variety of that. And similarly, the same kaolin, where we have plenty of kaolin resources in India, and we could get the self-assembled microspheres or macrospheres based on kaolin. And this kaolin is naturally converted to mullite. And people are now talking about seawater derived magnesia, and they are talking about cost-effective processing of seawater magnesia. But already we have some alternate materials like kaolin and like rare earth materials, but most of the things are not at all explored for the refractory sector. And in fact, steel melting people, they are not at all, how can I say, even if we propose a project on such kind of advanced refractories, Ministry of Steel never considers for any funding. And steel industry is also hesitating to accept the new developments. These are all some of the problem that we are facing, the research fraternity is facing. So this much is from my side, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anantakumar.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions, any comments from the panel? Then thanks once again to Dr. Anantakumar for the wonderful presentation. We will move on to our next presenter, Mr. Arnab Bhattacharya. He's the General Manager in charge, Refractory, RINL, Visakhapatnam Steel Plant. Over to you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Mr. Bhattacharya, you are muted.
Now, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So, good evening to all of you. Today's topic is challenges and opportunities in Indian refractory industry towards Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. It's a very apt in view of the series of bad patches faced by Indian industries due to COVID, then the raw material shortage, supply chain disruption due to non-availability of containers, then congestion of ports and swelling shipping freight rates, high energy cost, natural calamities and war situations throughout the world, etc., etc. Then this self-reliant India campaign, or whatever you are telling, that Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhijan, is a vision of a new India envisaged by our Honorable Prime Minister on 12th May 2020. He raised a clarion call to the nation, giving a kickstart to the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhijan and announced a special economic and a comprehensive package of rupees 20 lakh crores, which is equivalent to almost 10% of India's GDP, to fight the disastrous effect caused by our COVID-19 pandemic in India. The aim of this initiative is to make the country and its citizens independent and self-reliant by creating an ecosystem that will allow Indian companies to be highly competitive on this global stage. The refractory industry also faced most of the problems which was faced by the other Indian industries in general, and had to dribble through the challenges to retain its existence in the competitive market. This Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhijan has opened a lot of opportunities to Indian refractory industry, but it has to overcome a lot of challenges to achieve this. 75% of the refractories produced in India goes to feed the steel industry, while 15% is consumed by cement and the rest 10% by non-ferrous, glass, petrochemicals, other industry, etc. Hence, it is apt to state that refractories consumption in India is mainly driven by steel industry. In fact, cost of refractory amounts to around 2 to 3% cost of the crude steel being produced in the Indian steel companies. Now, the industries which are major users of steel, such as infra, construction, auto, are putting up now a strong performance, thus giving a strong support to the steel demand in this country. Central government and many other state governments also give emphasis on developing infrastructure like roads, ports, airports, metros, etc. Which that also gives a lot of confidence to Indian steel industry. Government of India has taken an ambitious project of reaching 300 million tons of crude steel production capacity for India by the year 2030. It may be somewhat ambitious, but even if it reaches at 250 million tons also, there will be considerable increase in consumption of refractories. In fact, during 2019-20, the total refractory production in India was around 12,08,926 metric tons, and total sales turnover of Indian refractory industries was rupees around 9,944 crores. Considering the fact that at present, on an average, the capacity utilization of Indian refractory industry is around 60 to 70%, higher maybe for higher end products, the present capacity is enough to cater to around 150 million tons per annum of crude steel production. Beyond that, this capacity expansion of plants will be needed. And many companies have already embarked upon it, especially in matte carbon production. Unlike steel, capacity expansion of refractory units is not much capital intensive exercise, for which Indian refractory units can augment their production capacity in line with increased crude steel production. However, the key challenge will be to secure raw material linkage, as raw material consumption will be more than double of the present level, even if crude steel production capacity becomes 250 million tons by 2030. It is a well-known fact that Indian refractory is highly dependent on imported raw materials, mainly China. Why not? China is a main source country for vital raw materials like dead bond magnesia, fused magnesia, sintered fused spinel, calcite alumina, fused alumina, calcine bauxite, zirconia, silicon carbide, and graphite, to name a few. But of late, China's strict environment policies are impacting raw material supply chain. There has been a drastic fluctuation in Chinese supply of critical raw materials in recent times, which has impacted the entire supply chain, thereby creating shortage of key refractory raw materials, especially during COVID and Winter Olympics and Chinese New Year time. So every industry, all steel industries, all different face this time. And it is a very critical area, we have to sell it. For India now, it has become imperative to use alternative sources and also to try for enhancing domestic raw material production to remain competitive in the current scenario. We have heard in the last speech how this can be developed. It is a well-known fact that availability of good quality raw materials in India is very limited. But advanced beneficiation facility may be helpful. But techno-economic factor is not the most major determinant for fixing raw material sources that refractory industry has to check it. Some raw material sources have been identified, and I believe that Indian refractory manufacturers are working on it, as per IMA was told. Now, as I am from Bharat Steel, let me now express our concern about the effect of Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Maximum consumption of refractories in the steel plant happens in steel welding shop, especially in converters and steel tipping ladders. It is very important to use suitable types of refractory for the internal lining of converters and ladders in steelmaking, where the dissolved inclusions coming from the refractory material require fine control to obtain the targeted steel quality. In this context, magnesia carbon-based refractories are largely utilized thanks to the adequate durability of the vessel lining in terms of number of hits before reline. Almost 70% of basic shape refractory Indian refractory manufacturers imported from Chinese plants to supply to the customers in India. More than 40% of the raw materials for refractory companies in India are sourced from China. Due to disturbance of raw material supply from China, Indian refractory manufacturers are now sourcing from mines in Brazil, Turkey, Australia, and Europe, South Africa, as raw materials available in India are not suitable for manufacturing good quality magnesium products. But the amount of raw materials available in these countries are also very limited compared to the amount of availability of Chinese raw materials. But the Indian brick makers are yet to cope up with their Chinese counterparts in both quality and quantity, apart from higher price being demanded by the Indian manufacturers compared to what the Chinese people are offering. Inconsistency of quality of refractories is hitting the steel plants like just severely. We're not able to maintain desired ladle times as the ladles are getting down prematurely, thus sometimes creating problem in ladle availability. Indian refractory producers have to take necessary action, corrective actions to reduce this variance in performance of refractories. So that satisfaction level of the customers increase. Also, due to various factors like non-availability of suitable raw materials, overbooking of production facilities after announcing this Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme, Corona, non-availability of qualified manpower at manufacturing and application level, transportation problem, there is a serious shortage of availability of refractories and non-adherence of promised delivery schedule from Indian manufacturers. As on date, we are facing difficulties and for our converter, ladle, RS sets, and sometimes this is upsetting our production schedule also. Indian manufacturers are asking for more lead time, which is also disturbing our production plan. I believe that Indian refractory manufacturers will take note of it and make suitable planning for addressing these shortcomings. Do in-depth failure analysis, improve research and development to develop advanced refractory products to cater to customer needs like import substitution, which will lead to shifting our dependence of refractory users from international companies to Indian companies. I am sure that Indian refractory manufacturers will take a lead role and take the help of this Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative to raise the quality and manufacturing capacity to a stellar height, so that not only Indian but foreign companies will start recognizing us as supplier of best quality refractories for them. Lastly, I thank the organizer of this webinar for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of such a large audience. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. And the pleasure is ours to have you here in our webinar.
Thank you.
So do we have any questions for Mr. Arnab Bhattacharya? If not, then we will move on to our next speaker. We have Mr. Gautam Ghosh. He's the Senior Manager, Refractory Technology Group, Tata Steel. Mr. Gautam Ghosh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So you may please proceed with your presentation.
So good evening, everybody. So it is a great opportunity and pleasure to me that to speaking on this forum on a very important subject to all of us, because this is one of the subject which has made us a united all over the refractory fraternity in India. And in this subject, multiple peoples from various aspects, people are working and contributing to achieve to a better goal. So to before explaining to the challenges and opportunities in this aspect, I would like to explain in steel plant almost major consumption in refractories are in steel making area, as Arnav sir was telling. Around more than 70% is consumed in steel making area, around 20% is in iron making area, and around 10% is mills area. So majorly steel making consumes the refractory, whereas in refractory, steel ladle is the major consumer of refractory in steel making, followed by BOF and caster. So these are the very highly prone to refractory consume area. The Atmanirbhar Bharat, that objective is also related with this application uses distribution, because most of the steel refractories we are using in steel making or ladle are coming from outside. We are importing. Sometimes vessel bricks we are not able to produce in India, and this production of vessel bricks is also very important from the Atmanirbhar point of view. So few qualities of refractories and few application areas are critical from this point of view. So moving ahead, if we try to understand the changing role of the refractory in current days, so previously we are thinking that refractory is used for holding a metal container. Now we are more of us thinking refractory being a functional role, like flow control device, like energy saving, like refining process. So many functional roles are introduced to refractories. And in the next, previously refractories were purchased in a generic type, very low in quality. But current days, people or users are using refractory from exclusive refractory quality for a exclusive specific application. So for this kind of exclusivity of application, makes her more dependent on the foreign countries for importing. So then next point, what is coming from the skill dependent, now it is coming to technology dependent. So from the technology being the current important factor also, so people are much more import oriented than the Indian business or Indian manufacturing. So functional role being high-end quality and technology application dependency, actually making us much more redundant in Atmanirbhar Bharat. And in next aspect, if we try to understand the refractory manufacturers versus refractory users perspective, we'll understand that refractory manufacturers are more they are much more worried about the refractory cost being their most drivers, and refractory specific consumptions. Also, the overall refractory market is also shrinking. Whereas refractory users perspective, they are thinking that they observe that very less fundamental kind of research is happening in the refractory manufacturer end, and quality optimization. So in this spectrum of factors like cost, specific consumption, then market, overall refractory market, and refractory quality of optimization and research, we need to find out the pathway for creating a better Atmanirbhar Bharat refractory initiative. So going forward, if I try to analyze and understand the actionable points, what needs to be taken, then I will try to classify them in a two bigger baskets. First one being the application point, first one being the operational point of view. So in operational point of view is one major area. Another important aspect is the technology point of view. So if we try to deep down the operational point of view, we understand the application or manufacturing of refractories in India. So and then Indian manufacturing capability needs to be enhanced. All the refractory manufacturers needs to enhance their capability. and so their manufacturing facilities needs to be established. Not only the manufacturing facility increase will only solve the problem, their distribution of facilities, like any manufacturer must have a wider range of geographical presence, so that they can cater to their customers or various kinds of customers to them also. So application or refractory manufacturing being the important area, now we have observed, as my previous speakers from the starting, they have initially impacted how much capacity increase they are increasing, and they are also trying to make up with the increasing demand in steel or other sectors. So refractory capacity or operational point of view, there is another important thing which I want to mention is that supply chain of the refractory material. So ensuring the correct quality of refractory in a supply in a steel plant needs to be very much focused way. So people need to consider and need to build their strategies in this area, so that people can understand and create supply chain, a totally reliable supply chain of refractory material for the industries, user industries. So apart from supply chain, I would like to also bring the aspect of cost also. Being the refractory one of the costly item for the users, for their industry, their scope for optimizing the cost is very high in this area. So indigenization, if we focus on the indigenization of the refractory materials, so there are multiple objectives. So that must be linked with the cost benefit also, so that the users are also much more attracted to the indigenization process. So apart from this operational role, another basket is the technological role. In the technological role, I would like to focus that there are much more technological limitations for which we are not able to currently do the Atmanirbhar Bharat kind of very successfully, because many technologies and raw material associated things with the raw material is not available in India. So the importing or parallel implementation of the technologies in Indian manufacturing field needs to be enhanced in a much more greater aspect. At the same time, if we focus on the technologies, the major important factor is the raw material availability in India also. So raw material being the one of the scarce material for refractory, we need to understand how the raw material availability can be enhanced in this aspect. So in summarizing all those things, so I will say being refractory one of the important factor for the user industries, the drive for Atmanirbhar Bharat is very much important, and we need to do much more initiatives from the refractory operational and technology point of view to achieve our goal. So that's all from my side, and thanks to organizing team for giving me the opportunity to speak, to view my to show my viewpoints. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghosh. You have kept your deliberation very short and concise. Thank you once again for joining us and being a part of our webinar. We have one final speaker for today, Mr. M.R. Kumar, General Manager, Iron Making, Mecon Limited. Mr. Kumar has been with us since the beginning of the webinar, and he has been patiently listening to all the deliberations today. So I'm sure he will be able to sum up the webinar very well. So over to you, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ankit. I am audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. A very good evening to all, gentlemen. We are thankful to Steel and Metallurgy magazine team for inviting Mecon to speak on this webinar. Though Mecon is not a consumer or a producer of refractory, but Mukherjee Saab has put us in this webinar to understand what is the requirements of the industry and at the same time, what is the consumer, the steel industry, which is basically using more refractory. So what is their views, to understand that, so that we can make a better specifications to meet the requirements. So thank you very much. I'm in iron making of Mecon Limited, more than 20 years of service. In this webinar, I would like to mention here, Mecon is working for various initiatives of Government of India to propagate into the industry. One thing I would like to mention here is Ukraine war is happening, and you may be aware, neon is very important element which is required for the chip manufacturing, electronic items, and the writing also. So we are working for Government of India, because neon supply to India is 70% of that is supplied by Ukraine. So why we are saying this here is the same thing applies to steel industry. We are fully dependent on China, and something goes wrong with China, then we will be in the trouble for getting the raw materials and the finished raw refractories. So you are all aware and discussed here also, India is working hard to achieve 300 million ton steel production capacity target by 2030. Refractory is an integral part of steel making, and it is moving towards hand to hand meeting the steel industry needs. It is estimated that for installing a 3 million ton integrated steel plant, we require approximately 1,13,000 tons of refractory materials. So during operation also, as a consuming material, it is also regularly used. So presently, India is having about 140 million ton capacity of steel production. So 65 to 70% of refractory produced in India is catering to steel industry. That's what we heard from various speakers also. Out of that, 40% is being imported. So even for domestically producing refractory, the majority required raw materials are also imported. India is moving towards self-reliance on all fronts, including refractory industry. So it is pertinent to discuss on this important industry and to be with this industry for self-sustenance. The refractories are very important, not only to steel industry, but for other industries. That is because 65 to 70% of refractories are produced in India, are utilized in steel plants, and refractories plays a very key role in manufacturing of steel. So that's why it is not the cost of refractory as such very important, but more important is the loss of production if we do not use the right kind of refractory in steel plant operation, and loss the opportunity in tremendous. So we should not go always the cheaper things. It is very important aspect. That's why performance-based payments are being discussed. And the payments which is given to the suppliers, some portion is a fixed one, other one is the variable based on the performance, which is seen in the cast house refractory of blast furnace and converter refractory as well. So it is the reason that majority steel producers like JSW and SAIL are interacting with refractory manufacturers, and like Steel and Metallurgy magazine have organized, I think this is the third webinar on refractory industry in last 2 years, if I am correct. So the operating committee meetings are also organized once in a year for all stakeholders. What Mr. Rai was telling, like there is no platform for interacting. This is the one of the such platform. The operating committee meeting, that means the industry who are working in the refractory area, they are meeting yearly, like blast furnace operating committees, interplant operating committee, and SMS operating committee, to share their knowledge and experiences. So to make various types of refractory material domestically, we require various raw materials and how to get it. That is the biggest question what we are discussing, and the previous speakers were also talking on that. So it is important point that Ukraine war, and it may so happen that our relations with China, what I was earlier also telling, it may hamper, and this is the time we are talking on Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative by Government of India. We can source things only from within the country. So the refractory manufacturing is nothing but, in a crude sense, if you see, a mix of various raw materials in different proportion and produce desired refractory material which should sustain high temperatures, high pressure, and abrasion resistance. So as an approximation, if you see, around 11 to 12 kg refractory is required for 1 ton of steel against international standard of 67 kg. So with this simple arithmetic, if you see, 1.32 million ton refractory per annum per present 110 million steel production nowadays. So by 2030, the earlier speaker was also telling like 300 million ton production capacity is required by 2030. So refractory manufacturing capacity also to be increased. So what is presently is 2 million ton, you have to go for the 4 million ton only for the steel industry. We have roughly 50% present, and the capacity utilization is also one of the important factor of the refractory industry. The average is 6 to 70% capacity utilization. So to produce refractories domestically, we are importing major raw materials from China because of cheap refractory and other raw materials. So if you look at this, we find that there is no much of competition within domestic refractory manufacturers, and we know that very few companies which are there currently, and many of the global players coming to India, establishing their plants like RHI, Vesuvius, TRL, Kosai. So when we look at the domestic manufacturers, we have very few of them. We can count them on fingers, talking about leading suppliers, and most of them either in small or medium sector, and they do not have major facilities. So moreover, Indian refractory producers are facing stiff competition from Chinese industry as well. So frankly speaking, this is the one industry which is going to get a boost by the clarion call given by our Honorable Prime Minister about the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. When we look at the list of the refractories for used in steel industry, in integrated steel plant, it starts from coke oven, it goes to sinter plant, blast furnace, open top, torpedo ladles as well. Converter is the major source of refractory, what we have discussed earlier. There is a line dollar plant and the rolling mills. So by seeing this, various types of refractory used in steel plants with coke ovens, either it is a top charged or stamp charged battery. These are mainly silica bricks or silicate bricks, which are available abundantly in our country. In blast furnace, if you go, the proper refractory, blast furnace proper refractory, where hearth refractory is a big deal. This is implemented because this is being exported. We are getting imported from the other countries. The only hearth refractory, carbon refractory, which is coming from outside. So why I'm saying is Mecon is one of the designer of blast furnaces indigenously. We have already installed more than 20 blast furnaces in India, where we are using 90 to 95% refractory are indigenous. Only hearth carbon is only being imported. So so this is likewise, even the raw material required for making carbon blocks, which are mainly fused alumina and bauxite, both the raw materials are such that they are not available in our country. For better quality nowadays, carbon blocks are imported from Poland, Russia, and other than Southeast Asia, like China. So if we go to the hard block stores in blast furnace, again we need alumina silicate, which are available in India, but number of suppliers are few. Here also, Mecon is doing one project where we are giving stores to Durgapur steel plant. So where we are using 100% indigenous materials. But sometimes, because of delivery issues, these are maybe imported from China. So at the same time, if you see the discussion about the blast furnace requirement, there is a mud gun mask to close the tap hole. There are good suppliers available in India. Tata Refractories, Galleries, Vesuvius are supplying mud gun masks. So even SAIL also has a subsidiary where they are producing the mud gun mask. So now domestic manufacturers should come out of those difficulties, and they have reached the requirement now for supplying to large blast furnace also. We have to see it. So for SMS, what we have discussed earlier, there is a shortage of refractory and less cycle time, due to which we are dependent on China and Europe. For other steel melting and mills, no doubt there is many suppliers are available, but for the quality needs to be enhanced to meet the required standards. The steel producers need refractories in a short notice and have less lead time for procurement. Having gone through everything, it is found that there is a need on part of Indian refractory manufacturers also, and there is a need on part of country as well to take certain steps so that we see to it that we are able to get all the materials from within the country. Mr. Rai was telling the same thing. The both has to, supplier and the manufacturers has to meet somewhere to get this. So as I mentioned, high quality magnesite, bauxite, fused alumina, graphene, etc. are imported, and some of these materials we can work out within the country by going with exploration. So there is a need to identify the raw material sources, setting up the refractory units, which is not a big deal, like steel plant, which is required huge investment. You need certain presses also where refractory is doing, you need some investment. So you cannot set up a facility within our country provided we have the raw material. So raw material is the big requirement. So raw material availability becomes very critical for the domestic refractory industry. We have the requisite raw material, we can always do it. Raw material beneficiation and blending also may be thought of. Second is to make high value refractories like carbon refractory. We need to undertake R&D activity within our country. But Ranand Kumar was telling that there are some refractories he is also already doing in research. In that research, like that we have to go ahead. Though Caltris is working on this area, interaction also will come to consultants like us so that we can have sensitize the industry. The requirement of ceramic engineers and their retention is a major challenge, as they do not like to go there because there are so many green processes like IT services. So we have to go through campus selections so that at campus itself we can retain with us. So there is a depth of R&D area, particularly in this high value refractory area. Academia, institutions and industry interaction is also a need of the hour. So faster environmental clearances and other statutory clearances of the mines is to be taken part by Government of India as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat for mines to open. The supply and production needs to be augmented for match the economy of scale. So what we have discussed here. We also need to acquire foreign raw materials assets, like what is happening in steel and other industries. So we have a potential, and the Indian refractory industry can play a bigger role as 40% refractories are imported and foreign exchange can be saved. Close interaction with steel producers to have an understanding their future requirements for gearing up, and also to have tie-up with foreign suppliers. There is always a two sides of a coin. For the sake of Atmanirbhar Bharat, there should not be a higher manufacturing cost. Steel industry is already having so much of burden of many other expenses. The refractory expenses is about 3% of cost of steel production. Even if it is 500 kg increase, it will economy of scale, it will hamper so much to the steel industry. So what is my summary is telling is by discussing all about, we should have an artificial intelligence for making this refractory materials, and we should adopt industry 4.0. So Mecon is also working for RAML and RSP for the TLC refractory. You see, as we understand, POSCO is using robotics for making the TLC refractory. So there are also requirement of the new raw material development. What Dr. Anand Kumar was saying, environmental stewardship. That means every steel industry, refractory industry, should have an ISO 45001, 2018, ISO 9001, so that somebody is telling like this industry is having a standard. There should be skill development and training. So people, the mason of a civil mason and a mason of a refractory, both are different. And this is an industry which comes from the family itself. So we have to nurture those level into that level. We have to have a diplomas like that. Skill development programs has to be organized. There should be a collaborative approach that I was telling. So what is happening? Steel manufacturers and refractory producers has to be together, like POSCO and chosen refractories. Both are in the same premises where they are operating. They are interacting with each other. They are developing some material. They are testing there. Then they are getting back. And even chosen refractory is sending to other countries as well. The same refractories what they are giving to POSCO. There is one aspect everybody is missed. This is the circular economy action plan. So you have to minimize the raw materials requirement and resources, improving the processes, the waste, and there should be a waste to wealth policy like JSW, Viswanathan Saab was telling, and RANL also using the slime things. So this is very much important for the refractory industry as well. There should be an alternate fuel also you have to think of other than electricity. There should be a natural gas utilization in refractory because Mecon is working for daily gas lines, and all over India we are making the gas lines, which are all passing to steel industry and the refractory. PLI scheme like also should be applied to refractory industry. And Roy Saab was telling less than 200 crore orders to be sourced to local only. So this should be taken as an opportunity for the steel industry. We should have move ahead. And the last one which I would like to mention is Mecon can act as a facilitator between industry and the government agencies. Thank you, Mukherjee Saab, Mr. Ankit, for inviting Mecon, and thanks to our management for the opportunity given to me to represent Mecon, to share my views. Thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kumar Saab. Thank you so much for giving not just an overview, but also a direction where the refractory industry is. Especially, I like your idea of the circular economy concept, which I am an ardent fan of, and I have done a series of webinars only on waste to wealth, because if you call it waste, it is a waste. Otherwise, nothing is a waste. So the refractory industry today, technologies are available. You have robotics available, where robots can be used to remove the refractories, and the used refractories can be reused, recycled, and also the direction you gave with regard to use of alternate energy sources other than electricity. There are green energies available today, and we should look at the option. RHI is already doing work. Atmanirbhar is also doing work. All of them, the World Refractory Association is taking a lot of initiatives to this effect in using hydrogen as an alternate source. So I'm sure this is something which the industry will take note of. And it was really wonderful to end the day with the consultant's view. What the consultant, I am especially grateful, Mr. Kumar, to your DT, Mr. Agarwal, whom I sent a WhatsApp message, and he immediately suggested your name, and he said that I will give you a perfect person to deliberate on this subject. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you to special thanks to all the panelists today. So we started with the producers, refractory manufacturers, then we moved on to the steel producers, and finally ended up with the consultant's view. So it was really, and we also had someone from the research institution of CSIR to talk on various raw material options that we have. We can look at other options as well. So it was very well taken from all corners of the industry. So thanks to all our panelists, our sponsors today. Thanks to Mr. Sinha, Mr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Kinshuk Bhattacharya, Mr. Gautam Ghosh is not here, but my special thanks to Mr. Gautam Ghosh of Tata Steel as well. Also to Mr. Anand Kumar and Mr. Rai, who gave in a very, I would say, useful input to today's proceedings, where he mentioned about the Big Brother approach, which I feel is not totally acceptable, in the sense that it's not true, I would say, because everyone in this industry is on a same level playing field, and it's an opportunity for all of us to look. Though you mentioned, Mr. Kumar, that it is only 3% of the plant's total production cost, but that 3% is also very important in terms of, I would say, as an input material in the entire steel making process, be it iron making, steel making. In fact, right from the blast furnaces to our casters, everywhere, I think whatever savings we make today makes it good for our tomorrow's cyclical industry, because the steel industry, as we know, is a very cyclical industry. Now, we really cannot complain, because the government, in its wisdom, had thought of the export tax because of the inflationary pressures which the country is going through right now. But I'm sure once inflation eases a bit, we will do away with the export tax, which will help this industry to a great extent. And let's hope that our input costs, like coking coal, which is a major area of concern for all of us, the coking coal prices also come down. And with that, I would request Ankit to propose a formal vote of thanks before we say bye to each other. So Ankit, over to you for proposing a vote of thanks.
Yeah, so without taking up too much time, I will just wrap up today's discussion with a few quick closing remarks. So thanks to the efforts of all the speakers, we have been able to conclude the webinar today within the time frame of our schedule. And during our webinar, we have had some wonderful presentations and speakers today. We had the chance to discuss some of the pressing concerns of the Indian refractory industry today. And we discussed possible collaborative solutions to put a step forward towards an Atmanirbhar, or a self-reliant, self-sustainable industry. I would like to thank all the panelists for deliberating on such vital topics and making the most of this forum to provide a vibrant exchange of ideas. Thanks to all the attendees who joined through Zoom or who are watching on our stream on YouTube. My heartfelt gratitude goes out to our gold sponsors Vesuvius, our silver sponsors Dalmia OCL, our steel sponsors CCRT Labs and Zicron and our innovation partner RHI Magnesita for making this webinar successful. Last but not the least, thanks to the Steel and Metallurgy team for working endlessly to make this event possible. Today was our 45th webinar since the pandemic began and pushed us towards this new normal format of collaboration. And we look forward to seeing you all in many more webinars to come. With that, I would like to conclude today's meeting. Thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And look forward to our future webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Have a great
Thank you
weekend,
very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sinha, Mr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Anant Kumar. Have a great weekend. Wish you all the best.
Thank you
so much. Namaskar.
Namaskar.